Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Biochemical Madmen in the Marvel Universe. Chapter 21. It is still too dangerous to conduct biochemical experiments in urban areas. In the future, the products of the company's laboratory, even if it is the T-virus, will be nothing more than small troubles. Once something goes wrong, it will cause too much harm in the urban area. After the new experimental base is completed, I hope you can take charge of the security of the new base. There will be a key part of our company in the future. Quote. Noah continued. Frank nodded. Speaking of which, he was looking forward to it. Boss, where are the products of the company you mentioned? Frank asked impatiently. Don't worry, you'll see you soon. With that said, the two walked to a test area. Here, a dozen researchers in white are busy. Elvis, come here. Noah yelled, and in the crowd, a researcher with half-haired hair came over. Boss, why are you here? Elvis' expression was a little fanatical. For them, Noah's arrival was not just a simple change of boss. At present, the company's research is all led by the boss himself. And in just a few months, good results have been achieved. Before, he didn't even dare to think about it. So in Elviston's eyes, the boss is a top scientist in the field of biochemistry. That was the only reason for the frenzy in his eyes. Noah said, This is Sawyer Elvis, our research director here. This is Frank Castle, the security director hired by the company. I believe that no one can make trouble under Frank's nose. Quote. Hearing that the boss had such a high opinion of the security director, Elvis nodded solemnly towards Frank. As for Frank, it was very touching. Although he is very confident in himself. But it is very rare for Noah to trust him so much. After introducing the two, Noah said, Elvis, start a wolf fighting team and let our security director see how our company's products are. A small team. Elvis was a little surprised, especially after seeing the eagerness in Frank's eyes. Obviously, the new security director wanted to try it himself. Is it too much? One fighting wolf is enough to cause a headache for a fully armed team. Noah smiled and said, a small team, in front of Frank, is not even trouble. Understood. Although Elvis didn't quite believe that people could do this, he still nodded. Then arrange in the past. Start a wolf fighting team, prepare to be sent down to the test field, and prepare two serums at the same time. Although the problem of the infectivity of the T-virus cannot be solved yet, the healing serum has been researched. Otherwise, even Noah would not dare to let Frank end easily. When he was ready, Frank was also ready for the experiment. From top to bottom, Frank only prepared 2 pistols, plus a dagger. Seeing Frank's preparations, Elvis couldn't help frowning. The horror of fighting wolf is absolutely beyond your imagination. If you play like this, it is no different from courting death. Quote. Frank smiled, but persisted. Elvis shook his head. Since the new security chief is so confident, let him try. Anyway, they can control it here, and they also prepare serum. It's good to let him suffer a little bit. Afterwards, Frank walked into the proving ground. Elvis looked at Frank and turned his back, and said involuntarily. Boss, this person is too careless. This time, he will definitely get hurt. Noah smiled and said, I don't think so, I just wonder how long these fighting wolves can last in Frank's hands. As long as it lasts more than 5 minutes, I'm happy with it. Quote. When Elvis heard this, his beard jumped up in anger. Boss, this is the 2nd generation product, fighting wolf, not the 1st generation Sangu. I bet he will fail in less than 2 minutes, and we will need to rescue him at that time. Quote. Noah laughed. In that case, how about we make a bet? Elvis looked at Frank suspiciously. He didn't trust the security supervisor, but the boss was too confident. According to his understanding, the boss is a bit young, but he never does anything that is not sure. Forget it, I'm an old man, and I never gamble with anyone. He gave up. Noah smiled. The company's researchers are mediocre, but Elvis is the only exception. This is also the reason why he not only did not leave after the company's major change, but also became the research director. To complete a research, you need many things, strength, luck, and even direction, all of which are indispensable. It's just that Elvis never had that chance, nor did he have that luck. That's why I have been doing nothing for most of my life. After he took out the T-virus and the tooth-fighting wolf gene, the old man's ability was immediately manifested. Seeing the old man in front of him give up, he didn't pursue it anymore. Just looking forward to the proving grounds. Come on, let me see how powerful the legendary Punisher is. He has confidence in fighting Wolf, but this is the Punisher. It is not an easy thing to be a superhero in a mortal body. Especially the Punisher is familiar with special operations tactics such as individual soldiers and teams. He is also proficient in combat, fighting, shooting, underwater operations, extorting confessions, intelligence gathering, etc., which is very comprehensive. In front of such a person, can fighting Wolf display its due fighting strength? In the proving ground, Frank waited silently. At the same time, he put the serum in the backpack on his waist. It is said that this serum needs to be injected immediately after being bitten by a fighting wolf, otherwise it will be infected with the virus, and if it is fast, it may die within a few minutes. This terrible virus made him a little dignified. Soon, on the edge of the test site, one door after another opened, a total of 8 doors were opened. It can be seen that inside all the opened doors, there are canine creatures squatting. The reason why they are canine creatures is that these guys are not only larger than ordinary dogs, but also have no hair all over their bodies, and their canine teeth are also abnormally huge. His smooth, hairless body was not thick, but it gave him a very fit feeling. The most important thing is the eyes of these guys, full of fierce light, without the slightest emotion. Killing weapon. This was his first feeling when he saw these guys. Soon, as the control console outside the experimental field was unlocked, the 8 fighting wolves rushed over like sharp arrows. Without hesitation, Frank fired a few shots. There was a distance of more than 30 meters between the two sides. With such a long distance, he was confident that he could easily kill all these fighting wolves. Of course, he also knew that if it was really that simple, it wouldn't be a qualified weapon. So while shooting, he also immediately started to back away. The most powerful human being is good at using weapons. Even though he is confident in his fighting skills, he has no intention of fighting hand to hand. A full shuttle of bullets hit the first 2 fighting wolves. Frank's mouth curled up. No matter how special these guys are. With so many bullets, they are all dead. Frank thought well. However, the development of things soon exceeded his expectations. Of the fighting wolves he shot with all his strength, only one fell to the ground screaming. Although the other fighting wolf had several bullet holes in its body, it showed no sign of falling to the ground. Frank's pupils shrank. At this time, the distance between the two sides was less than 15 meters. For those fighting wolves, this distance can be reached in the blink of an eye. Running is absolutely impossible, because he found that the explosive power of these fighting wolves must not be inferior to that of cheetahs. Just don't know how the staying power is. But he obviously didn't have that chance to verify it. With a swipe, the magazine is automatically ejected. At the same time, when the spare magazine with hands crossed on the waist is touched, the magazine has been replaced. Squinting his eyes slightly, Frank shot again without hesitation. 3 shots. 2 of the bullets hit a fighting wolf precisely on the head. In an instant, the fighting wolf fell to the ground and died. There was clarity in Frank's eyes. Sure enough, the weakness of these guys is in the head. After he tested the weakness of fighting wolves, these fighting wolves had already rushed to his side. Frank only had time to shoot again, killing a fighting wolf, and then quickly rolled to the side to avoid the attack of the rushing wolf. The speed is too fast. Frank was amazed again, but he remained calm. Melee combat. There are means of melee combat. He doesn't just use guns. Putting the pistol back into his waist and taking out the ballistic knife at the same time, Frank's eyes were sharp. Outside the experiment field, Elvis had already opened his mouth wide. This is just contact. How come 3 fighting wolves died? Human trials have not been conducted before. But that was a heavily armed team. With the same number, it was almost wiped out by the fighting wolf group. Now Frank only has 2 pistols to use. Although fighting wolf's weakness is obvious, it will take time to test the weakness and discover it. And it only took 5 seconds at most from the attack of the fighting wolves to the death of the 3 fighting wolves. Is this guy a monster? Quote. Elvis couldn't help thinking. Facing the fighting wolf, when you don't know your weaknesses, it is the time when you are most prone to problems. But it only took a few seconds for Frank to discover the weakness, and then use the weakness to cause a kill. This kind of record is simply beyond his imagination of human beings. For a moment, his eyes were hot. "Boss, can you let me study Director Frank later?" The corner of Noah's mouth twitched, and he said, "Frank is just an ordinary person, there is nothing special about him. The reason why he is strong is purely from his own training." Alvia was disappointed. Fortunately, he thought Director Frank was a special person who had been strengthened in some way. Although there are no superheroes in this era, but with the existence of the US team, anyone who cares knows that human beings can become stronger. In the proving ground, Frank's nerves were highly tense. With his strong fighting consciousness, he quickly found a way to deal with Fighting Wolf. And in just 2 minutes, he killed 2 fighting wolves with a dagger, and at the same time took out another one with a gun. In other words, he had already killed 6 of the 8 fighting wolves in less than 3 minutes. And as he continued to adapt, his way of coping became simpler. Seeing the opportunity, Frank made a decisive attack. While narrowly dodging a fighting wolf that was rushing towards him, the ballistic knife stabbed down, and the penultimate fighting wolf also fell to the ground screaming. Only the last one left. At this point, the fighting wolf has lost the strongest way of fighting, hunting. A fighting wolf obviously couldn't pose a threat to him, so he easily shot and killed him. Soon, Noah walked in clapping his hands. "What a powerful fighting ability. I thought this wolf fighting team could hold you for at least 5 minutes. As a result, it was all solved by you in less than 4 minutes." Quote. Panting for breath, Frank said, "These fighting wolves are really powerful. Whether it is speed or strength, they are quite terrifying. If I hadn't been in an open field, let me test out the weakness with a gun first, and kill 3 of them, it would be hard to imagine how I would win. Perhaps these guys are not very useful on the frontal battlefield, but once they enter street fighting, they will definitely be a nightmare for all enemies." Quote. Hearing Frank's admiration, Noah nodded. Indeed, these fighting wolves were originally born for small-scale battles. In this era, large-scale wars are rare. Although he couldn't last 5 minutes, Noah was still very satisfied. It can only be said that it's not that the fighting wolf is not powerful, but that the Punisher is too powerful. And, Frank was right about one thing. The experiment this time was originally carried out in a situation that was unfavorable to Fighting Wolf. Elvis stared at Frank firmly, and asked, "Director Frank, is your body really not genetically modified?" The eagerness in his eyes made Frank feel a little panicked. "No, that's a pity," Elvis muttered to himself. Although he didn't know what was the pity, Frank was still instinctively relieved. These guys who do research are sometimes really scary to watch. It gave him the urge to punch him. After this test, Noah also has a new understanding of the performance of the fighting wolf when facing the strong. At the same time, it provided a valuable research and promotional material for itself. Tomorrow's expo, he has a little more confidence. It's a pity that Umbrella's products are still too single, otherwise, the competitiveness will be stronger. On the second day, the Weapons Expo officially began. Noah rushed to the venue with his secret weapon. Buyers have not yet appeared at this time, but most of the sellers are already in place. This time, Noah finally saw Tony Stark. But Noah just glanced at him, then turned around and went about his own business. He doesn't have the habit of sticking a hot face to a cold butt. Counting the time, this Iron Man will soon be in trouble. At that time, I can make a good profit. Although one's own business has already started to make a profit, there is no harm in making more money for things like money. After all, the Iron Man earns some money too well. When he became a shareholder of Stark Industries, thinking about Tony Stark's ugly face at that time, he felt a sense of gloom. Of course, these are things to come. Now it is more important to complete the expo smoothly. During the period, Norman Osborn came over again. Apparently he was interested in Umbrella's mysterious biotechnology. As for Noah, he is also happy to do so. T-virus is a very perfect virus gene. If it can be fully analyzed, a perfect human being like Alice can be produced, and the genetic disease of the Osborn family must not be difficult. With this capital, it shouldn't be any difficulty for him to get a piece of Osborn's business. Although the Green Goblin personality made him crazy, at least for now, he was still the Norman Osborn who did everything for his son. just as he was arranging the booth and making final preparations. A discordant voice sounded. "What is this, puppy dog?" Hearing this voice, Noah turned around and saw Tony Stark, who was eating a hamburger and drinking Coke, with a disdainful expression on his face. "Small dog." Noah looked unhappy. "Would you like to see if these puppies can bite your head off?" Tony Stark's expression froze for a moment, but he didn't answer. He just saw that Noah Allen was upset, so he came here to cause trouble, not to seek death. He had absolutely no desire to get close to this seemingly exaggerated creature. "It's really hard for you to use this kind of puppy as an exhibit." After a brief silence, Tony Stark continued to taunt. Noah ignored him. "You can't get used to this kind of guy. The more you get used to it, the more arrogant he will be. Would you like to go and see my Jericho missile? That is the aesthetics of violence." Tony Stark didn't care about Noah's ignorance at all, and he was still showing off his latest weapon endlessly. After a long time, seeing Noah Allen not answering, he left quite bored. To show off, it is interesting to have someone to support it. Without a doubt, Noah beat him with ignorance. But watching Tony Stark leave, Noah showed a little curiosity on his face. The Jericho missile, if I'm not mistaken, is the weapon that got Tony Stark kidnapped. It seems that the plot of Iron Man 1 is about to begin. Noah thought to himself. After a while of busy work, the Weapons Expo officially started. Many figures representing the top ranks of the military walked in. These are their main customers. There is no doubt that the target favored by the military recently is definitely the product of Stark Industries. Seeing the military walking towards the exhibition area where the Stark Group is located without hesitation, Justin Hammer's face was gloomy, and he clenched his fist unwillingly. Noah is thinking about how to sell his products next. But he didn't forget to join in the fun. I saw Tony Stark looked at many high-level military officials, and introduced with a proud face. "Everyone, please take a look at Stark Industries' flagship product, the first new anti-gravity system, integrating our own developed rapid counterattack technology. The absolute overlord of modern warfare, the Jericho missile." Quote. While talking, the virtual display screen began to demonstrate the test explosion video of the Jericho missile. That kind of soul-stirring power made the hearts of many high-ranking military officers tremble. I beg to differ when they say the best weapons don't fire. I think the best weapons fire once. This is an intelligently controlled cluster missile, which is characterized by a wide range of damage and great power. In addition, it is also equipped with the intelligent control terminal of our Stark Group, which is definitely the best on the market. Maybe it has no other more advantages, but please tell me. What is the most important weapon? Quote. An army colonel interjected. Naturally, it is precision and power. Tony Stark raised his mouth and nodded. That's right, it's precision and power. No one can surpass the precision of Stark Industries' intelligence. As for the power, after watching the video, do you have any questions? Quote. After Tony Stark finished speaking, the senior military officials in the middle whispered, most of them were satisfied. There is no doubt that this Jericho missile makes them very satisfied. The only question is how much to order. Noah watched Tony Stark's performance and couldn't help but admit that this guy is not an excellent businessman, but he is a terrifying genius. If you want to sell your products, the most important thing is not to be able to speak, but to have a good enough product. After seeing the explosion demonstration of the Jericho missile, he had to admit that this kind of power is indeed terrifying. The only problem is that the price is a bit expensive, and one piece costs more than $5 million. But overall it is worth the money. Afterwards, these buyers went to other exhibition areas to have a look. At most of the stalls, they ordered some products, but the quantity was more or less. These products may not be comparable to Stark Industries' weapons. But it's a balance. It is impossible for the military to let a Stark Industries weapon family dominate. After that, they went to the Hammer Industrial Exhibition area. Another huge order. If the products of Stark Industries are high-end brands, then the products of Hammer Industries are cheap ones. It may not be as good as Stark Industries products, but it is superior in quality and price. As a key support target of the military, these buyers placed a large order without hesitation. Seeing that it was already afternoon, Noah finally welcomed his first batch of customers. What's this, dog? Quote. A lieutenant general asked a question. Since he came to participate in the Weapons Expo, he believed that these creatures should be able to play a role, but it was hard to imagine that these big guys could become qualified weapons. Noah nodded and said, "That's right, this is our umbrella's flagship product, Fighting Wolf, this time." Looking at the size of these big guys, a few of them nodded, and they could indeed be called wolves. To save time, let's introduce its advantages, the Lieutenant General said. Obviously, he didn't have any hope for Fighting Wolf. Noah confidently said, "The Fighting Wolf is the latest scientific research achievement of our umbrella. It is different from the powerful weapons of Stark Industries. The existence of Fighting Wolf was not born for large-scale battlefields. It was born for street fighting. Only this small-scale battlefield is the best place for them to play." Quote. Afterwards, Noah called up part of the calculated data of Fighting Wolf. The Tooth Fighting Wolf is in the system and is classified as a Level 2 creature, worth 638 cell sources. Using previously available genetic data, he roughly deduced how the system was divided. The so-called Level 2 represents the level of fully armed individual soldiers. The above Level 3, according to the division of the system, should belong to the limit of the human body, which is the level of Captain America. The division of the system is very simple, but the actual battle is much more complicated. In addition to that shield, an ordinary Level 3 creature is not enough to look at in front of the captain. And the Fighting Wolf blessed by the T-virus is worth 870 cells, at least at the cell level, it has surpassed the Tooth Fighting Wolf. Considering the undead attribute of Fighting Wolf, he thinks that although he can't reach Level 3, he is definitely a strong player in Level 2. As for Frank, even if he has not been strengthened, but with his physical fitness to the peak and years of combat experience, if he does not limit his means, his overall strength should be between Level 3 and Level 4. This was also the main reason why a wolf fighting team couldn't deal with him. Of course, real battles cannot be judged simply by digitization. The Army Lieutenant General glanced at the data, feeling a little moved. It surpasses the explosive power of a cheetah, and surpasses the strength and bite force of a liger. The most important thing is not to be afraid of bullets. Nice one. But seeing this, he was a little suspicious. Not afraid of bullets, are these big guys invulnerable? Noah shook his head and said, "Naturally not. In fact, the biggest advantage of the Fighting Wolf is here, except for the head and spine, the Fighting Wolf has no weaknesses. Even if the spine is destroyed, it can only make it lose its combat power, not die." Quote. Not afraid of death. Hearing Noah's explanation, most of the people present were moved. For them, the compensation fee for a soldier's death is often infinitely more expensive than the equipment. So for the military, the biggest issue has always been how to reduce the death rate. And street fighting has always been the fighting method that is most likely to cause casualties. I just don't know how maneuverable this Fighting Wolf is, and how complicated tasks it can perform. I am Lieutenant General Newman Reynolds. I have to admit, I'm a bit impressed by what you said, but I want to know. What kind of combat missions can they perform? If you can satisfy me, I believe you can get a good order. Quote. Ida S. Dunn, Noah smiled. No one can refuse such a cheap weapon. He turned on his virtual display screen. Compared with the products of Stark Industries, the homemade ones are obviously inferior. But fortunately, it does not affect the use. After calling up various relevant data, Noah continued to explain. This is a biological weapon that we have concocted through the genes of the top dog and some other biological genes. In order to avoid trouble, we did not give these biological weapons intelligence. So all its actions follow instinct. The control method is through this intelligent system. Because of its low cost, it can only perform simple tasks. For example, forward, backward, killing enemies, etc. Precise missions such as rescues cannot be performed unless someone is nearby to take control. But the flaws are not concealed. Its price is only $180,000. If Lieutenant General Reynolds is your thing, don't miss it. Next, I will play some field test videos. I believe it will give you a clearer judgment on this product. Quote. With that said, Noah started playing the wolf fighting video. In the first video, there is a team of 8 fully armed, and the opponent is a fighting wolf. After nearly 20 minutes of stalemate, 5 of them lost their combat power, and the fighting wolf was killed. Seeing this, Lieutenant General Reynolds made up his mind. But he decided to continue watching. In the second video, there are 5 8-person teams, a total of 40 people, still in complex terrain. The number of fighting wolves is also 40. But this time, because of the large number, Do Lang chose to attack actively. When the time came to 13 minutes, the 40-man team was completely wiped out. The death toll of fighting wolf is 7. This terrifying battle-loss ratio surprised everyone. It can be seen through the video demonstration. When the number of such biological weapons becomes suppressed, the frontal combat effectiveness will increase. Even at a disadvantage in numbers, it is dangerous. Most importantly, someone noticed something. Mr. Allen, does the person who controls Fighting Wolf have any information on those teams? These big guys can always find the enemy's position in the first time. Quote. Noah smiled. No, this is another main ability of Fighting Wolf. Smell. They inherit and even optimize the advantages of the genes in the body. In addition to a certain weakening of vision, their senses of hearing and smell are extremely sensitive. Definitely a good hand to track down the enemy. Quote. Lieutenant General Reynolds paused slightly. He imagined, if every team performing missions could be equipped with such a fighting wolf, the enemy will have nowhere to hide. As for the price, $180,000, much higher than what he initially imagined. But after he understood the specific ability of Fighting Wolf, it was much lower than he imagined. A Hummer costs nearly $300,000. A Fighting Wolf with so many functions is simply too affordable. Can field experiments be conducted? In addition, if you buy a large quantity, there should be a discount. Quote. Lieutenant General Reynolds spoke simply. Of course. Noah smiled happily. A Fighting Wolf costs less than $30,000 to make. In other words, every time one is sold, he can earn $150,000. Not just Lieutenant General Reynolds. There are many interested people, and members include various military branches. Even the police system has the intention to buy a batch of them back as police dogs. It is a bit expensive, still in hesitation. After all, they are not as rich as the military. Besides the military, there was another department that surprised him. SHIELD, also known as Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. This department is also the kind of rich and powerful. Originally, he thought that he had done a lot of things with corpse bugs, which might attract the attention of SHIELD. As a result, he has not appeared until now, which made him worry in vain for a long time. Now he doesn't have the ability to wrestle with SHIELD. But soon it will change. When this business is completed, he will be the capital of the real world, and he will also have the military as his backer. Even if Nick Fury wants to touch him, he has to think about it. With numerous organizations expressing interest in buying. For Noah, this weapons expo is a perfect end. That night, in order to celebrate the favor of the military, Noah had a good time with Caroline at home. Just after taking a shower, I heard Caroline say, "The world is getting more and more dangerous. There was a Fantastic Four before, and now this big green guy is here." Quote. When Noah heard this, he hurried over. At this time, a piece of news was playing on the TV. On the TV, a little green giant was fighting the military, and the tank was like tofu dregs in front of it. Bruce Banner, Hulk finally appeared, but now the Hulk has no contact with him, so Noah quickly regained his composure. Smiling at Caroline, "This big guy is not as good as me." Caroline rolled her eyes, and then let out an exclamation. That strong little man rushed over again. After some cloud and rain, Noah leaned against the bed. Not to mention the Fantastic Four, these guys came out too early. Now the appearance of the Hulk means that the plot is finally about to begin. The truth of this world will be revealed slowly. Superheroes, aliens, ancient guardians, and even gods and demons from different worlds, etc. Especially a terrifying existence like GUE. When the plot of this world begins, everything will go in an uncontrollable direction. GUE is alive and well now. When the Ancient One fell and took over as Doctor Strange, he seriously doubted whether the other party could continue to stop the invasion of those Dimension Lords. In particular, this world is not as simple as it seems. The looms of fate are all out. Even if there are some other plots messed up, it's not surprising if you think about it. Things like plots are the most unreliable. It seems to be living well, but I still have to look at myself. The next day, Umbrella went to the second floor. A group of buyers interested in Fighting Wolf followed Noah to the testing ground here. Everyone, the Fighting Wolf is produced here. Please don't move around. There are many things nearby, and if you are not careful, it may kill us all. Quote. Many buyers pouted. This kind of trick seems to scare people at first glance, it's too low level. However, a few curious people still withdrew their gazes. Umbrella is a biotechnology company. It's hard to say what's weird about it. Seeing everyone calm down, Noah took them to the vicinity of the test site. We have armed guards here to test the power of the Fighting Wolf. Do you want to let my people test directly, or do you do it yourself? Quote. Lieutenant General Reynolds immediately said. Since it's an experiment, let our people carry it out. The ones I brought are the elites of the special forces. Only when facing elite troops, can we see the excellence of the product. Quote. Noah has nothing to do with himself. He just made a gesture of invitation to Lieutenant General Reynolds. He has absolute confidence in Fighting Wolf. Said to Elvis on the side. Go and equip the men of Lieutenant General Reynolds with serum, one for each person, and be ready for rescue at any time. Elvis nodded. Lieutenant General Reynolds asked curiously. Serum, what are you doing? Do these fighting wolves have poison? Quote. It's not a toxin, it's a virus. Noah apologized and said. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear to you guys. Fighting Wolf carries a special infectious virus. As long as you get bitten, even a small wound can be fatal. At the same time, it will turn people into a terrible monster, which is extremely dangerous. Quote. With that said, Noah released a video to everyone. Although human experiments are often conducted, Umbrella currently does not have the ability to extract death row prisoners from prison for experiments. So his test subjects are all animals. A gorilla was bitten by a fighting wolf, and fell to the ground within a few minutes. The most frightening thing was that soon, the orangutan stood up. But at this moment, there was only paleness left in its eyes. Significant loss of biological characteristics. What are these? Lieutenant General Reynolds was startled. Can these guys be infected again? He thought about the possibility. Certainly. Noah nodded and said. This dissemination is unlimited, so extremely dangerous. Once out of control, big problems can happen. Fortunately, we have developed the serum. As long as it is injected in time, nothing will happen. So strictly speaking, the current Fighting Wolf is still a semi-finished product. But you can rest assured. The non-infectious experiment of Wolf Fighter has been preliminarily completed, and we are sure to complete it within a month, so the delivery time may be slower, but what will be handed over to you will definitely be the finished Wolf Fighter. Quote. Hearing this, some people who had retreated relaxed. Unlimited spread, this is not a good phenomenon. It is too dangerous. But some people, such as Lieutenant General Reynolds, have a different view. Since there is serum, it means that the virus is controllable. I thought, I need a part of this primitive fighting wolf. Quote. Noah looked embarrassed, and said, Lieutenant General, it's not that I don't want to give it to you, but that this virus is too dangerous. And it is said that there is serum, but the cost of serum is not low. It will be troublesome if something goes wrong. Quote. How much? What? Noah pretended not to understand. How much money you can sell, we can sign an agreement to guarantee that it will not affect you. Noah immediately lowered his head, as if calculating. But in fact, he had already prepared for the current scene. The military doesn't care how many people this thing will kill, as long as it is controllable. For them, the higher the killing efficiency, the better. After a few seconds, Noah raised his head and said with difficulty. The production cost of the serum is very high, at least $10,000 a bottle before I can sell it. As for the deadly one, it costs $300,000. Of course, the premise is that you must sign a corresponding agreement. I don't want to take responsibility for any problems. Quote. Lieutenant General Reynolds narrowed his eyes. The so-called deadly ones, of course he knew, were talking about these contagious fighting wolves. The name is apt. If what Noah Allen said is true, in theory, a fighting wolf could destroy the world. Of course, it's just a theory. Is one more than $120,000? A bit expensive. Lieutenant General Reynolds was a little dissatisfied. There was not much difference in the cost of the two products, and if it was not possible, the cost of fighting wolf would be lower than that of lethal. Let's take a look at the performance of your products first. Of course, Noah grinned. Soon, a team of 20 people entered the test area. In order to better demonstrate the power of fighting wolf, the experimental site is chosen to simulate the urban environment. As the experiment begins, 20 fighting wolves enter the arena, facing the experimenters who entered the arena in advance. These fighting wolves just sniffed with their noses. It didn't take long to find my way. What a keen sense of smell. Many people looked solemn. I couldn't see it in the previous video, but standing at the scene now and understanding the actual scene, I can understand how terrifying this kind of wolf fighting is. However, Lieutenant General Reynolds is still confident. Every member of this army is a veteran of many battles. As long as these works of yours can reduce the number of troops by 1/3, it is qualified. If you can reduce the number of troops by half, then I will buy more. Quote. Noah smiled and said, "It seems that I can make a lot of money today." Reynolds raised his eyebrows, sneered and didn't say much. Below, as the fighting wolf approached, the battle was on the verge of breaking out. The next moment, a fighting wolf found a target and attacked suddenly. The man didn't react at all, and was bitten on the arm with one bite. That is to say, strict control was carried out, otherwise, within a few seconds, that person would be bitten to death. You know, the bite force of a fighting wolf even exceeds that of a tiger. The next moment, another Special Forces member shot and killed the attacking fighting wolf. Good marksmanship. Noah gave a sincere compliment. Then he said to Lieutenant General Reynolds, "If it is facing a real enemy, I guarantee that he will not survive." Seeing that the bitten Special Forces member was injected with serum, Noah smiled and said something more. Also, he can't possibly have a serum. That's right, if it was a real battlefield, he would already be dead. Even if it is this kind of deadly person, the deadly person's side can gain a new combat power. Thinking of the scene where the gorilla came back from the dead, Lieutenant General Reynolds felt a chill in his heart. At the same time, I also understand that Umbrella will definitely get support after the high-level government knows the existence of this biological weapon. Which is more difficult, resurrection from the dead or eternal life? Nobody knows. But now the resurrection from the dead is at hand. Even if this kind of resurrection is incomplete, who knows that if we continue to study, there will be no new breakthroughs. As for now, he already understood the fighting power of these fighting wolves. Just a few minutes, his staff has been reduced by 1/3. And the number of fighting wolves is still half. It seems to be a disadvantage, but if the fight continues like this, even if it can win, it will almost wipe out the whole army. As he said before, these are truly elite units. 180,000 for an elite fighter who is tireless, not afraid of death, and has the ability to track the enemy and scout. The deal was clearly a bargain. Without continuing to watch the battle below, he said, "So, let's chat about prices and deals." He's ready to place an order. Pleasant cooperation. After negotiation, he gave Lieutenant General Reynolds a price of $170,000 each, and the price of the deadly one remained unchanged. For such contagious works, it is doomed to be impossible to mass produce. So he has no intention of lowering the price at all. In the end, the military bought 500 fighting wolves and ordered 30 lethals at the same time. The Air Force and Navy had little need for the fighting wolf and only bought 100 of them in total. Together with other buyers who have ideas about fighting wolves, his first business sold a total of 960 fighting wolves, 30 deadly ones, and 100 serums. Lin finally figured it out. He sold a total of more than 170 million. The military paid him 170,000 yuan, and SHIELD wanted to buy it with the military as a package, but they ignored him. And the cost was only 20 million. In other words, he made a direct profit of 150 million. No wonder it is said that capital is windfall profits. After signing the contract, Noah was in a good mood. The previous plan can also be carried out. But if you do the math carefully, there are more places to spend money. Not to mention anything else, both companies were in a state of loss before. Although Annabella has made some money, that income is completely dependent on bank loans if she does not pay. Now that he has made money, the first thing to do is to pay back the money first. There are also Hive underground bases. Just the initial budget has already reached 300 million. This is still preliminary, and the actual consumption is likely to be greater than this figure. Although Annabella doesn't need such a large testing ground, a research base is also needed. Even if the scale can be worse, the others can't be worse. If it doesn't work out, it will cost 200 or 300 million. Don't talk about these future expenses, but just talk about the current expenses, which will give him a headache. In short, the calculation of 150 million yuan seems to be nothing. The good mood that Noah just made money disappeared directly. Forget it, don't mention these. Noah shook his head. Get rid of these worries. In any case, today is a good day to make money. Shield. Nick Fury held a report in his hand and frowned. After a while, Coulson walked in. Director, this is Umbrella's investigation report. Nick Fury reached out to take the report, opened it and looked at it, his already frowning brow tightened even more. Before Noah Allen entered Umbrella, this company had no breakthrough in biotechnology at all. But after that, in less than half a year, a product like Fighting Wolf was produced. I don't believe this is the fruit of months. There must be some secrets about him. Quote. As he spoke, he looked at another report in his hand. It was recorded in that report. It was the report of several gangsters that Noah Allen controlled the massacre of black bugs. He doesn't care about the dead gangsters. To him, it doesn't matter how many of those scumbags die. What he noticed was the way those people died, those black bugs. It would be fine if Noah Allen had been exposed to these in a large laboratory before. But after investigation, although he studied biology at Imperial State University, he had no similar research in school. But still too weird. Would you like to test it out? Coulson asked. Nick Fury thought about it. Forget it, keep watching closely. This report came a little late. He is now a popular man in the military, and even the White House has people paying attention. Quote. Thinking of the virus that came back from the dead, he felt a little apprehensive in his eyes. This is a human taboo. And the next step in resurrection is eternal life. For many people, even a possibility is enough of a concern. Noah is a student at Empire State University. This is a legendary university. Peter Parker is studying here, and at the same time, there are well-known professors in the Marvel world such as Professor Lizard and Dr. Octopus. Today, his purpose is to find Dr. Lizard Kurt Connor. Kurt Connor is a research freak, spending all day in the laboratory. When I came to the laboratory, I found him as expected. Professor Connor. Noah said hello. Kurt Connor turned his head. Who are you? He doesn't remember teaching this student. Noah Allen. So you are Noah Allen. Kurt Connor put down his work and looked at Noah with a kind expression. Have you heard of me? Noah was a little puzzled. Of course I have heard that you are the pride of the school. Although you have not been in school for a long time, you have achieved many amazing results. I'm afraid there are not many people who haven't heard of you, not to mention that I'm still a professor of biology. But what did you come to me for? Do you have any research doubts? Quote. Noah looked at Professor Connor's empty right arm. Kurt Connor noticed his gaze and turned his body unnaturally. It must be very inconvenient. Kurt Connor frowned. What are you talking about? His face was not very good looking. Of course it's your arm. Noah said. I'm used to it. If that's all you're saying, you can leave. Quote. As he spoke, Kurt Connor pointed to the door and said bluntly. Noah didn't move, but said. Perhaps, I have hope for you to have your arm again. If you don't mind, I can leave now. Quote. To have an arm again. He studied for many years, but he did not see such hope. What a student can do. So at the first moment, he felt that Noah was making fun of his arm. Even if he is used to life with one arm. But for so many years, he has never been able to accept it, and has been studying the possibility of rebirth with a broken arm all the time. This is his taboo, no one is allowed to mention it. So, he was angry. Get out. When Noah heard this, he turned around and left without hesitation. Just the next moment, etc., Kurt Connor stopped him. Although his face was still angry, he finally became more rational. He was unwilling to give up hope of any kind. Even if it's just a casual statement from a student. Are you kidding me? Of course, have you heard of Umbrella? Kurt Connor's heart skipped a beat. Umbrella's bankruptcy and reorganization was considered to be full of disturbances at the beginning. He had heard some of them. If you know anything about Umbrella, you should know that Umbrella recently negotiated an order with the military. The reason for this is because Umbrella discovered an ancient virus. This virus is very miraculous. It is even possible to achieve death, resurrection, and life. Quote. Noah said word by word. Sure enough, Kurt Connor's eyes instantly lit up. If you can come back from the dead and grow arms, it's not impossible. And since Umbrella can sign an order with the military, apparently some results have been achieved in this regard. And these, to him, represent hope. Thinking of this, Kurt Connor asked, "Who are you?" Meet Kurt Connor's gaze. Noah sternly said, "I am the owner of Umbrella. I came here this time just to invite you to join Umbrella. Of course, I can assure you that I have never lied to you. In fact, the company already has some good products that are favored by the military. If you are interested, you can take the time to visit Umbrella. I guarantee you will be satisfied." Quote. With that said, Noah handed over a business card. Kurt Connor hesitated for a moment, then took the business card. If possible, he certainly hoped that one day he could regenerate his right arm. Seeing Kurt Connor accepting the business card, Noah smiled. He knew that the professor was already moved. He was very envious of this famous lizard professor. Apart from Sawyer Elvis, the research supervisor, there is no one who can take the lead in the research institute of his own company. But Professor Lizard is different. Although the lizard potion has many flaws, it can't hide its astonishing ability. Professor Connor, who can research lizard potions, is evident in his ability in the field of biological research. And what he said was not a lie. It's hard to say about the T-virus, but he still has an unsullied giant gene in his hand. This gene has the ability to regenerate a severed limb. Of course, research is extremely difficult. But isn't he himself? All others need to do is conduct some auxiliary research. The T-virus was studied by a team led by Sawyer Elvis, and the unscrupulous giant was studied by Dr. Kurt Connor. Coupled with their own and system research, this can better speed up the research progress. As for the study of lost dogs, he's not going to go on. The tooth-fighting wolf, the main gene of the mourning dog, has insufficient potential, and even if it is studied further, it will not be of much use. Unless some other excellent genes are added for improvement in the future. As for now, the two models of Fighting Wolf and Deadly can meet his transition requirements. After receiving the business card, Kurt Connor nodded. Understood, I will go and have a look tomorrow. Hope this can be a turning point for me. Kurt Connor felt a little more expectation in his heart. After the two parties agreed to meet in Umbrella the next day, Kurt Connor looked at the lizards in the glass tank. This is his next research goal. The lizard's ability to regenerate its tail made him think it was of great research value. Maybe it won't be available for a while. I hope that Umbrella can really surprise herself. Although he is only a freshman, Noah has already obtained his internship permit in advance because of his excellent grades. Therefore, under normal circumstances, there is no need to attend classes in school. After the matter was settled, he left directly. He has much more important research to do than attend classes. The current research on the infection of T-virus has reached a critical moment. He wants to try to solve the problem of infection within a few days, and then start training fighting wolves. After all, the contract has already been signed. If it is delayed, the problem will be very big. I don't know how long I've been in the lab. While researching, he compared the research results given by the system. With the combination of the two, the infectious research is being quickly resolved by him. While he was busy, someone came in and told him that a man named Kurt Connor was looking for him and said he had made an appointment. Noah's eyes lit up. Director Elvis, come with me to see Professor Connor. If nothing else, he'll work with you afterwards. Quote. Elvis nodded, and the two went to the upper floor of the company together. I saw Kurt Connor wearing a suit, but Noah could tell at a glance that he obviously didn't wear this kind of clothing often. Professor Connor, let me introduce you. This is Sawyer Elwes, the director of the research department. This is Professor Connor. Quote. Noah introduced the two of them respectively. Umbrella is divided into upper and lower parts. The ground is the office area, and the underground is the research area. At present, the main scientific research task of our company is the research of T-virus. This is an amazing virus. If we can understand it, I think we can go deep into God's forbidden zone. Quote. Elvis said frantically. God's restricted area. Kurt Connor naturally knew what this meant. According to one study, 90% of the human brain is in a sleep state. This 90% is God's restricted area. It is said that Einstein's brain utilization rate only reached 15%. No one knows what it means to go deep into God's forbidden zone. What is certain is that if God's forbidden zone can be fully developed, then this person is a god. Noah smiled and said, God's restricted area is not so easy to reach. Even Tony Stark, that stinking fart, can only be said to have just touched God's forbidden zone. Although it is uncomfortable, I have to say that Tony Stark is definitely one of the smartest people in the world. Although the T-virus is excellent, it is not realistic to say that it can penetrate into God's restricted area. However, I think that if the T-virus can be thoroughly studied, superpowers may become possible. Quote. Elvis laughed. Boss, if Tony Stark is the smartest person in this world, what are you, I am naturally much worse than him. Noah said modestly. Elvis shook his head and said, you two are just walking in different fields. If you also choose military industry, you may not be worse than him. You can solve the results that hundreds of people in the company can't research, but you can solve it in half an hour. I don't think Tony Stark is smarter than you. Quote. Noah smiled and didn't speak. Although he is also very smart, he doesn't think he can be compared with Tony Stark without systematic research. Of course, the existence of the system is an established fact. Therefore, he really doesn't feel that he is worse than Tony Stark now. Even because of the ability to exchange genes from other worlds. He believed that his future achievements would definitely surpass that Iron Man. He never doubted this. As for Kurt Connor on the side, he just remained silent. He knew Noah was a genius. It's just that he didn't expect that in the eyes of Elvis, the research director, it was so powerful. The three of them entered the elevator while walking. Noah said, Professor Connor, if you are willing to join Umbrella, you will not join Elvis' team. I hope you can lead a team to conduct research alone. This new research is not the T-virus, but compared to the T-virus, the new project is more in line with the mechanism of the human body. It may not be comparable to the T-virus in other aspects, but in terms of recovery, it surpasses the T-virus by more than a notch. That is, in my opinion, the real hope that can bring your limbs back to life. Quote. For a moment, Kurt Connor's eyes shone brightly. He thought that the T-virus was the possibility that the other party said. It turns out, no. As the three arrived at the laboratory, Noah led the two into a closed laboratory. Then Noah carefully took out a test tube from the cold storage, which contained some flesh and blood. Noah extracted some tissue. Dr. Connor, come and take a look. Kurt Connor heard the words and opened the microscope to observe the extracted tissue. Soon, Kurt Connor's face became more serious. After a while, his face was full of shock. These cells are so aggressive, and they have so much vitality. It's a tissue from a special kind of humanoid. It is not convenient to say the specific source, but I can tell you that this creature has no flaws other than its fatal weakness. Even broken limbs can grow back. Quote. The last sentence made Kurt Connor's eyes sparkle with disbelief. Humanoids that can regenerate from severed limbs. Humanoids. That's impossible. There is no such creature on Earth. Quote. Facing Kurt Connor's gaffe, Noah didn't speak, but just looked at him with a smile. On the other hand, Sawyer Elwes showed a thoughtful expression. He had never heard of such a humanoid creature. However, he had never heard of the T-virus, or the creature called the tooth-fighting wolf. Maybe there are some unknown areas in this world that are controlled by the boss, or maybe they are simply alien species. These are all possible, although I haven't heard of any evidence of alien sightings. But the legendary Area 51 is something most people have heard of. But as a researcher, he doesn't care about these. He only cares about his research. The same goes for Kurt Connor. He doesn't care how these things come about. He just wanted to figure out how to get his arm back. In his previous experiments, none of the cells came from humanoids. If there are such cells, he has great confidence and can research them. When can I come to study? Kurt Connor said bluntly. Anytime. Noah smiled happily. This time, the gap in his own researcher was initially filled. Director Elvis, how is the Tyrant's research going? Having said this, Elvis looked excited. Very well, with your research materials, we are sure to produce the trial model of the Tyrant within half a year. Half a year? Noah frowned. Too slow. This is just a trial run. You know, he has already cultivated the Tyrant cells. Is there any difficulty? He was a little puzzled. It is said that with Elvis, even if the main focus is on the research on the infectivity of the T-virus, the progress should not be so slow. Hearing Noah's question, Elvis hesitated and said, "Boss, we are short of money." At first Elvis said it was like flipping a switch. You haven't taken over the company for a long time, so you don't know much about the company's situation. Although Umbrella's predecessor was a biological research company, but because it was on the verge of bankruptcy, many of the equipment in it were actually defective products that should be eliminated. If I have the world's top equipment, I am sure to more than double the research speed. But let's not talk about anything else, let's talk about our laboratory. Seeing that Elvis had a tendency to talk endlessly, Noah directly stopped him. Stop, I just want to know, how much do you need? Quote, other places can save, but the laboratory is the top priority. In addition, he has just won a large order now. Even if it takes money, there are still many places. But it is an exaggeration to say that money is really just a number to him now. 63 million. How many? Noah wondered if he heard it wrong. Although I have already got 150 million yuan, I can't afford to spend it like this. Seeing the boss's expression, Elvis also realized that he had frightened the boss. And hastily said, 46 million, this 46 million is the minimum budget for updating the laboratory, and it cannot be saved anyway. Noah rubbed his head. 150 million is a lot. He spent more than 100 million in just a few days. The construction of the Umbrella experimental base in the suburbs started, and the various budgets reached 50 million. Subsequent construction will require continued investment. Now, another 46 million will be used for the replacement of the laboratory. Coupled with the funding applications from other departments of the company, he had the illusion that he really made a lot of money. Is 150 million very little? Thinking of Tony Stark asking for a price of $500 million to give away a case of beer, he understood. Sure enough, my asking price was too low. When the Tyrant series comes out, let's see how I cheat. Ah no, it's to make money. Glancing at Professor Connor, who was a little stunned by the tens of millions, Noah said. Professor Connor, you can see what experimental equipment you need in the past few days, and report it together. Time to buy together. Quote, only then did Kurt Connor come back to his senses. 46 million. With such a huge amount of funds, it will be approved as soon as it is said. My new boss is really powerful. After returning from the laboratory, Noah suddenly felt physically and mentally exhausted. He hasn't sold his first batch yet, and the unearned profits are running out. Sure enough, he was still a poor man. Caroline hasn't come back yet. Although her home has been repaired. But the left and right parents were not there, so she didn't leave. As for Noah, he is naturally in favor of this. With a beauty in your arms, this kind of life is the best. But when he thought of his parents, he thought of Irish gangsters. The existence of these guys made him feel like a stick in his throat. Hell's Kitchen has a lot of gangsters, if not an Irish gangster. It will not be able to deter other gangs. In particular, Annabella still has an unclear relationship with Jin. He even suspected that Jin had got his information and was just waiting for Finn Cooley to make a move. The underworld characters are getting more cunning than each other. This possibility is extremely high. While thinking, a phone call came. Hey, boss, there is news. Hearing this, Noah narrowed his eyes. Confirmed. Well, there it is. There was a cold glow in Noah's eyes. Since this is the case, you can come back, and I will handle the next thing personally. The voice over there hesitated. Don't you need my help? Noah laughed. Frank, I will kill people, too. After finishing speaking, Noah hung up the phone. He didn't expect that Finn Cooley would actually dare to disclose the location of his headquarters. Originally, he thought that the company was just a place to hide. Later, the person who was interrogated in the warehouse also gave this address, which made him really suspicious. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be true. That being the case, don't blame him for killing. In this way, it must have made Jin Bing afraid a little bit. But it's not right now. The whole cards in his hand are nothing more than Fighting Wolf and Corpse Worm. But of the two, Fighting Wolf's goal is too obvious, and it is not conducive to retreat. Corpse Worms are only level 0 creatures after all, and he doesn't believe that the Irish gang headquarters didn't take precautions against the attack of Corpse Worms. Just wait a little longer. The research on the infectivity of the T-virus will be completed soon, and then he will invest in the development of the Tyrant. It takes time for the company to concoct the Tyrant, but his system doesn't have those constraints. Although it consumes more resources, as long as you have theories, energy, and materials, you can easily make a Tyrant. The headquarters of Irish gangsters will become the best testing ground for tyrants. When Noah was engaged in research, a piece of news swept through the major newspapers. Playboy Tony Stark disappeared during a missile test in Afghanistan and was suspected of being hijacked by local armed forces. Quote. The world's largest executioner, Tony Stark, is missing. The military has sent a large number of personnel to search and rescue, but nothing has been found so far. Tony Stark is missing. This also means that Iron Man is finally about to appear. Noah looked at the newspaper, and then said to Caroline, "Get ready, the stock of Stark Industries will drop again, and by a lot immediately. I have a hunch, that guy won't die so easily." Quote. As the boss's secretary, Caroline didn't understand, but still nodded. During this period of time, she has already been completely conquered by this amazing big boy. He seems to know everything, always brings hope. Noticing the beauty's gaze, Noah smiled. This young lady's charm is indeed not simple. Is it because I have too little experience? Noah stroked his chin in thought. As far as he knew, Tony Stark took a long time from being kidnapped to escaping. But how long it was, he couldn't remember. After all, he doesn't have a photographic memory. Even if he can still remember some plots, he can't do anything about the details. Especially this kind of question that involves specific time. But since it's been a long time, he doesn't worry about it. Let that fool suffer first. Just like that, a month and a half passed in the blink of an eye. Tony Stark is still missing. After such a long period of time, stocks that were already volatile also fell sharply. A month ago, Noah had already purchased a large amount of shares in Stark Industries. If there is no accident, every time you come and go, it is a huge profit. Abbreviation, earn a fortune. The only problem is, Tony Stark isn't really dead. It seemed unlikely, but he was in a real world now. And there are other unknown special Marvel worlds. He has lived in this world for so long, so it is hard to say whether he would have had some influence earlier. Seeing that there was no news from Tony Stark, he couldn't sit still. Give me an appointment with James Rhodes. James Rhodes is Tony Stark's friend. As for Noah's most impression of him, it is natural that he will become a superhero war machine in the future. Although he didn't know Colonel James Rhodes, he had no trouble finding his phone number. Soon after dialing the phone, Colonel Rhodes said with some doubts, "Who are you?" "Noah Allen. Let's make a long story short. I might have a way of finding Tony Stark." Quote. Colonel Rhodes paused for breath, and quickly searched for the name Noah Allen in his brain. "How can I trust you?" Colonel Rhodes looked calm. Noah smiled and said, "It's just a try. After all, I don't want to lose money." It is inconvenient to explain the specific reasons. The way Noah used to find Tony Stark was naturally to use the Fighting Wolf to conduct a carpet search. This method is really stupid. But Fighting Wolf is tireless and has an extremely keen sense of smell. As long as the number is sufficient, it is not difficult to find someone. Moreover, this can be regarded as a promotion for his products. Although he proposed it on his own initiative, it is naturally impossible for him to look for it in vain. So Noah also has the idea of taking the opportunity to fight for his own interests. On the other side, after James Rhodes hung up the phone, he immediately started to verify Noah's identity. Umbrella's boss. Hope it's not bragging. Tony, you must come back. Quote. Tony Stark is the world's top genius. Losing him would be a loss to the United States and even the world. Moreover, due to the recent disappearance of Tony, the stock of Stark Industries fell sharply, which even caused turmoil in the entire capital market. Whether in public or private, he was anxious to get Tony back. Out of this thought, he immediately reported Noah's situation. Soon, someone negotiated with Noah. As for the result of the negotiation, Noah is very satisfied, and the other party should also be very satisfied. He obtained a high-risk biochemical research permit for his family. Although Annabella itself is engaged in research in this area, there are many studies that are strictly controlled by high-level officials. Just like the production and development of weapons. Umbrella took advantage of the convenience of his predecessor, and Noah spent a lot of money to solve it easily. But Annabella itself does not have this permission. So many things are actually researched in the name of Umbrella. In addition, he also received an intention order. The so-called intention naturally depends on the effect. The opportunity to show is the matter of searching and rescuing Tony Stark. Therefore, for the military, it is tantamount to prostitution of Noah's promise. For Noah, it was a proving ground to demonstrate the role of Fighting Wolf for nothing. 3 days later, several large transport planes landed in Afghanistan. Looking at the scene of yellow sand outside, Noah frowned and got off the plane. Colonel Rhodes came over. "Welcome to Afghanistan." Noah pressed his hat, felt the dry air here, and said angrily, "If possible, I wouldn't want to come to such a place where the birds don't shit. Let's get down to business as soon as possible, I already want to go home." Quote. Colonel Rhodes laughed. "Then as soon as possible, I hope you are not bragging." Noah said to the people behind him, "Get ready." Soon, 7 or 8 people immediately started to prepare. "Colonel Rhodes, can you pinpoint the approximate location of Tony Stark?" Rhodes took out a map. "Look here, we believe that the kidnapper of Tony is a well-known terrorist organization in Afghanistan. The center of activity of this organization is in the northern area, and after our search, the scope has been roughly determined to be in this area." Quote. Rhodes marked out an area on the map. Noah frowned when he saw it. This area is not small. Colonel Rhodes also noticed his gaze, and said helplessly, "This place is too crowded and it is very difficult to search. To be honest, the above has almost given up." Quote. In the past 2 months, even if the military pays more attention to Tony Stark, it is impossible to spend a lot of materials to find it without a bottom line. Just to say that now, the military's search and rescue efforts have actually dropped a lot. Apparently not much hope has been given up. Only Colonel Rhodes is still standing here. Otherwise, the one who received Noah would not be him himself. "It's such a big place, I'm afraid it will take longer." Noah didn't refuse, just spoke. In a cave in the mountains of Afghanistan. Tony Stark sat on the edge of the tattered bed, panting heavily. "Who are you?" "You can call me Ethan." Ethan put down the razor and turned around. Tony Stark touched his chest, where there was a big hole that looked terrifying. "If I were you, I wouldn't touch it." Seeing that Tony Stark seemed to want to pull out the wire from his chest, he spoke. "You have a lot of shrapnel in your chest, and despite my best efforts, some of it is still inside you. If you pull this thing out, it only takes a few minutes for the shrapnel to travel down the blood vessels and into your heart. As for the big guy, it's a car battery that keeps you alive." Quote. In just a few hours, Tony Stark felt that his worldview had been impacted. The weapon he thought he used to make the world peaceful turned out to be in the bases of these terrorists. This also made him doubt for the first time whether what he had done in the past few years was right. Can producing weapons really make the world more peaceful? At the same time, thousands of fighting wolves had been released. These are products that have just been mixed and ready for delivery. Because the research progress is faster than expected, it is not yet time for delivery. Pulling it out this time is just a good time to test the performance and let those buyers see how good they are. Noah stayed here for more than half a month. Tony Stark may be in too large a range, and even a tireless biological weapon like Fighting Wolf cannot complete the search in a short time. However, the search speed of Dolang shocked many people. Thousands of fighting wolves are much faster than the search speed of military helicopters. The most important thing is that the search of fighting wolves is far more effective than helicopters. Even because of the existence of Fighting Wolf, the military found several rebel organizations. Finally, there is a situation, a staff member watching the camera on Dolang said in surprise. Noah and Colonel Rhodes looked over immediately. I saw a group of rebels armed with live ammunition in a small valley. Although it is still uncertain, Noah instinctively felt that he had found the right place after seeing the scene below. After James Rhodes saw the situation on the camera, he also noticed that this group of people was unusual. They even saw Stark Industries missiles on the camera, which is not something ordinary terrorists can get. Colonel Rhodes, get ready, let's go pick him up. At this time, Tony Stark is trying his best to build the suit. The main body of the battle suit has been formed. Ethan clapped his hands in admiration. It's amazing, using these scraps of metal, you can actually create such a big guy. Tony Stark didn't speak, but the upturned mouth has proved that he is also very proud. 2 days at most to finish. When the time comes, follow the plan. Quote. While the two were discussing, suddenly there was gunfire outside, accompanied by shouts of killing. What's wrong? The two quickly looked towards the monitoring hole on the door. I saw the leader of the rebel army yelling loudly, beckoning his subordinates to walk outside. Knowing that Tony Stark couldn't understand, Ethan took the initiative to explain. He was saying that there was a group of animals like dogs rushing outside and asked everyone to help. Dog, how could there be dogs in this kind of place? And look at the meaning, those dogs have made these rebels in a hurry. His eyes flickered a few times, and Tony Stark said decisively, Ethan, come and help me put on my battle suit, this may be our best chance. But the battle suit is not finished yet. Ethan also noticed, but only the main part of the battle suit has been completed, and the most important visor has not been forged yet. It's fine if it's a cold weapon, but it's too dangerous in the hail of bullets. Tony Stark naturally understands this too. But he still said seriously, this is our best chance, the rebels have civil unrest, and the chances of us leaving are greatly increased. At least we can't put our hopes on praying for the victory of the enemies called dogs by the rebels. What's more, those enemies are not necessarily good people. Quote. When talking about dog-like animals, Tony Stark had a weird expression on his face. Because he remembered a nasty person. That guy made a dog-like toy. Could it be, it really was him? Tony Stark's complexion changed slightly. No, absolutely not. He didn't want to be saved by that guy's toy. Ethan, hurry up. The two quickly put on their equipment. However, this crude steel battle suit obviously does not have such excellent performance. It is not easy to wear, and the current suit is not finished yet, and many places need to be adjusted to wear it well. The two were busy for a while, and the gunshots outside seemed to become less and less. Noticing this situation, instead of stopping, the two speeded up. Now that the plan had already begun, they had no choice. No matter which side wins, they will definitely come into check, and they can't continue to hide it. Hurry up, Ethan. I'm trying. Ethan was also sweating profusely. At this moment, there seemed to be some movement outside. The faces of the two changed slightly. At the same time, I prayed that the other party would come in slowly. But their prayers were not answered. Is it in there? Get it out of the way. Tony Stark's complexion changed drastically. That's right, the guy he hated. What happened next was definitely the scene he hated the most. Ethan, help me take it off. At this moment, he looked a bit embarrassed. His battle armor was already half worn, and even one arm was put on, while the other arm was hanging outside. Although Ethan didn't understand, but looking at Tony Stark's face, he knew that they should be safe. And those people also speak English. Just then, there was an explosion. A small hole was blasted where the door was locked. A young man in a suit walked in. Yo, Tony, long time no see. Noah grinned. It's not easy to see Tony Stark in such a mess. As he spoke, his hand lightly pressed on the phone. Quietly, the commemorative photo has been completed. Noah smiled. Tony Stark's face was livid. That guy actually took a photo of him in such a mess. Give me your phone. Tony Stark flew into a rage and wanted to move on. But the unrestricted battle suit blocked him. Noah put away his mobile phone and said to Tony Stark, "Interview with you, how does it feel to be saved by someone you hate?" Tony Stark didn't speak, but his face grew darker. On the side, Colonel Rhodes hurriedly said, "Okay, both of you, this is not a place to reminisce about the old days, let's leave quickly." With Ethan's help, Tony Stark finally took off his armor. Looking at Noah's interested eyes, he said proudly, Boy, you didn't save me. In fact, once my suit is complete, I can leave at any time. Quote. Really, just relying on this pile of scrap metal. That's true, but Noah was still shocked. Seeing it in a movie is one thing, but seeing it in reality is another. With the terrible conditions here, Tony Stark can produce Mark I, it can only be said that he lives up to his name of genius. But he naturally couldn't let Tony Stark see the shock in his eyes. This is his rare opportunity to mock Tony Stark. And the result, not bad. At least Noah thinks so. Chapter 31. Noah doesn't really like superheroes. Even a little annoying. Because for him, the few kindnesses he gave were all given to his family. The practices of these so-called superheroes are simply two extremes with him, and it can even be said to be a satire of him. But I have to say, you don't have to like, or even hate, superheroes. But no one dared to say that they didn't admire these guys. Of course, admiration is one thing, position is another. If it is an enemy, even if it is a superhero, he will do it without hesitation. When he came out of the cave, Tony Stark had a stinky face the whole time. Noah kept smiling. The result of contacting Tony Stark in the past was that he suffered a bit. Now he finally got it back. Just for this, he felt that the wind and sand blowing here for a month was worth it. And that's not the point. Stuffed as an appetizer. When Tony Stark knew that he was a shareholder of Stark Industries, Noah was looking forward to what Iron Man would feel at that time. When he came out of the cave, apart from that stinky face, Tony Stark was inevitably a little surprised. He always felt that Noah Allen was nothing special. The so-called fighting wolf is not even as good as a toy in front of him. But seeing the battlefield outside, he had to admit that he had somewhat underestimated Noah Allen. The previous gunfire has proved that the battle ended very quickly. But now it seems that although there are many corpses outside, there are no military ones. Even the corpses of Fighting Wolf were only 2 or 3. This small-scale combat capability is indeed much easier to use than his missiles. Soon, the news spread to the country. Stark's stock, which had fallen, began to climb rapidly. It quickly returned to the level before Tony Stark disappeared, and it was even higher than before. Noah held the laptop, looked at the changes in the stock, and smiled. Tony Stark came over with 2 glasses of red wine in his hands. Boy, what are you looking at? Although he was very upset with Noah Allen, he had to admit that this time, it was indeed the other party who helped him. Even if he already has a plan to escape, no one can guarantee that there will be no problems before he succeeds. Noah looked up and saw Tony Stark's red wine, raised his eyebrows and took it. It's nothing, I'm just speculating in stocks recently. If you trade in stocks, I suggest you buy some shares of Stark Industries. That could make you a fortune. Quote, Tony Stark said teasingly. Noah chuckled and didn't speak. Then closed the notebook. But Tony Stark stopped Noah's movement. He doesn't want to owe favors. If he can pay back some money through stock trading, he will be much more relaxed. Let me help you take a look. Just halfway through speaking, his eyeballs widened. I saw that the stocks Noah bought were all Stark Industries. Although Noah does not hold many shares now, it already has the qualifications to sit at the general meeting of shareholders. What the hell? He just joked about getting Noah Allen to buy his company's stock, but he was just joking. He didn't think this kid would really buy his stock. That's a matter of face. Seeing Tony Stark's surprised expression, Noah hooked the corner of his mouth, then took the computer and said at the same time. I have to thank you for making me a fortune. Quote. You're welcome. For a kid like you who doesn't know how to invest, investing in Stark Industries is indeed a good choice. Tony Stark's face stinks when he speaks. However, Noah apparently didn't finish talking and put the mouse on the sell off. But it's a pity that our fate has come to an end. With that said, Noah pointed his finger. All Stark Industries shares were sold off. Tony Stark stared at Noah, his face was instantly livid, and he cursed directly. Asshole. Then he snatched back the red wine that was just given to Noah, turned around and left without caring about the clothes wet by the red wine. Looking at the back of Tony Stark leaving, Noah smiled. The happiness of a man is sometimes as simple as that. After 2 days of rest, Tony Stark was ready to go back. If Noah didn't expect, when he goes back, that press conference will directly make the stock of Stark Industries fall to the bottom again, and it may even be worse than this time. Now is the best time to sell. It can also take this opportunity to discuss Tony Stark. It's so cool. Okay, let's go home. Noah stretched himself. Having been here for such a long time, many things have already been left behind. Moreover, the equipment here is not good, which has a great impact on his research. Of course, most importantly, he didn't want to go with Tony Stark. Otherwise, that playboy will definitely overwhelm his limelight. Before leaving, he went to find Ethan. This doctor can save Tony Stark's life, and he can master multiple languages, so he is obviously a real talent. Unfortunately, Noah was declined. He had already expected this. Umbrella focuses on biotechnology. Ethan's main energy physics obviously didn't have a chance to show his skills in Umbrella. But he didn't just give up, instead he got Ethan's contact information. Although Umbrella does not have much development prospects in physics now. But in his plan, after the foundation of biotechnology is laid, he will also develop physics, especially energy. Not to mention getting a suit like Tony Stark. But in this world, energy is king. Just looking at Tony Stark's small arc reactor, which can supply the entire city with electricity for half an hour, is enough to show its horror. And Ethan was the only one who witnessed the birth of the arc reactor. Maybe he can't imitate it completely, but after researching, he should be able to come up with some good things. What's more, no one has too many talents. Ethan also had a good impression of Noah. After all, Noah saved his life. If Umbrella can really develop the energy industry in the future, whether he has a good place to go is indeed a consideration. As for going to Tony Stark, he never thought about it. Although the two can be regarded as sharing life and death. But what kind of character is Tony Stark, he knows very well. It's okay to be a friend, but to be a colleague, I'm afraid I will really be pissed off. So far, Noah's journey has come to a perfect end. Noah received good news just after flying back to New York. The Tyrant's research has finally made a breakthrough. After Noah heard the news, he went directly to the company without returning home. Compared with the Bereaved Dog series of small troubles, the Tyrant series are the real biological weapons in his mind. As soon as he arrived, Elvis greeted him. "Boss, our luck is very good, the progress of the Tyrant's research is much faster than expected. Now that the data model has been completed, the production of the trial model can be started as long as the post-check calculation is carried out." Quote. Noah restrained the excitement in his heart, nodded and said, "Take me to see first." In the lab, Elvis called up the Tyrant model. I saw a Tyrant image similar to the one he saw in the movies of his previous life, and a 9-image model appeared on the virtual projection. Seeing the image, Noah knew that there was really no major problem with this data model. But whether it can be used or not, you have to try it first to know. Thinking about it, he directly turned on the system and uploaded the data model in front of him. In just a few seconds, the system has already displayed the data. Current target, Tyrant prototype, level 4, required materials, T-virus original. Energy required, 1000 units. The time required for each unit of preparation 24 hours. Is it modulated? Quote, the Tyrant needs a lot of ingredients to concoct, but he has them all. In addition to materials, energy consumption is quite a lot. If 1 unit of energy is known, 100 corpse worms can be produced. In other words, the energy needed to prepare a Tyrant in the system is enough to prepare 100,000 corpse worms. Energy comes from various sources, the most common being electricity. 1000 units of energy is enough to keep Umbrella running smoothly for a week. But it's all worth it. Because from now on, he will officially gain a sense of security. A level 4 Tyrant possesses combat power beyond the limits of the human body. Coupled with the appropriate weapons, it is enough to fight superheroes. It's a pity that these are not the strength of my own body. With a little regret, Noah chose no, and then said, "Yes, there is no problem, let's start to make a trial model according to this direction." Elvis froze for a moment. With just a few glances, the boss can see that there is no problem. But thinking of the genius level of the boss, he nodded hesitantly. He also knows the gap between the two. Since the boss said so, it is obviously no problem. Understood, I will start to arrange the modulation. Well, after the trial model is prepared, the subsequent mass production model must be developed as soon as possible. That can bring profits to the company. Quote, boss, don't worry. With the trial model, it is not difficult to prepare the mass production model. Quote, Elvis said confidently. Noah nodded. He is also very confident, but not in Elvis, but in himself and the system. After hearing such good news, he felt that his plan to deal with the Irish gangsters should also be put on the agenda, so he called Frank. Frank deserves to be the famous Punisher. In just a few months, the entire umbrella, plus the tight security of Annabella, has risen several steps. And many of them are his former comrades in arms. Same as Frank. His old comrades, after retiring, not everyone can have a good job. For them, the group's security work is naturally considered a high-quality job. Although it cost more to hire these people, for Noah, the expenditure was totally worth it. And this is only the initial stage. Since there is AT virus, there may be other unknown genes in the future. His goal, of course, is to build his security force into a team that can deal with attacks from any force. The plan is full, but it is not easy to realize it. Frank was brought in mainly to let him search for the movements of the Irish gangsters. After hearing Noah's question, Frank said directly, Boss, since the last time you talked about the Irish gangsters, I've been keeping the brothers on them. The opponent's headquarters has not changed. Finn Cooley's recent whereabouts are also well confirmed. Quote, Noah's eyes moved slightly. In this case, help me find out his activity pattern in recent days, and leave it to me tomorrow. There was a flash of hesitation in Frank's eyes. Then nodded, expressing understanding. In the evening, go home. The news of Iron Man's return is playing on TV. Caroline just took a shower, and she was not surprised when she saw Noah, and sat directly beside him. Boss, it seems that you have made a lot of money. Noah glanced at the position below the head, a certain white arc looming, raised his eyebrows lightly, and said, Don't say you didn't make money, I told you. Caroline said distressedly while wiping her hair. I thought that playboy was dead. Who would have thought that you, the boss, really got him back? Quote. As he spoke, he glanced at him with some complaints. Noah shrugged. I told you about the opportunity to make money, but it's a pity you didn't follow. Caroline didn't care. She has no pursuit of money. And Annabella also has some of her shares. As long as Annabella develops better and better, she will not be short of money. So just smiled and said, I don't know how that playboy will look if he knows that you have become a shareholder of his company. She already had a deep understanding of how much her boss hated that playboy. When the topic came to this point, Noah suddenly smiled triumphantly. Tony Stark already knew. His face was really smelly at that time. But there was something worse, and I sold all his Stark Industries shares on the spot. You didn't see his expression at that time, haha. Quote. Caroline froze for a moment. Boss, what do you think? Tony Stark has just returned, and his company's stock will definitely continue to rise. Wouldn't it be a big loss to sell it at this time? It's too much for you to pay for it. Quote. Noah smiled, watched the picture of Tony Stark getting off the plane on TV, and said, In 2 days, I'll make you a fortune again, how about it? How to earn? Caroline looked suspicious. Tony Stark's stock will plummet soon, and then we will buy it again. How is this possible? With Tony Stark's Stark Industries, how could it fall? Then, she realized that her boss had been with Tony Stark all this time. Boss, do you have any inside information? Tony Stark is not going to sell arms anymore, do you think this news counts? Noah told the news without any concealment. Although Tony Stark hasn't said so directly. But through these few days of contact, Noah felt that he really had this idea. With the background of the movie plot, he is very confident about it. He was confident, but Caroline was dumbfounded. The famous playboy, the world's #1 arms dealer, actually wants to stop selling arms. Is the world crazy, or the boss is crazy? But seeing the boss's expression that didn't seem to be fake, she felt that Tony Stark was probably crazy. But, Tony Stark doesn't sell arms, and the stock price will definitely fall. How do you know that he still has the possibility of a comeback? Because he's Tony Stark, Noah said calmly. Not to mention that he knows the plot, even if he doesn't know, he doesn't believe that people like Tony Tucker have been silent forever. This time, he wants to buy a lot of shares in Stark Industries, and then take a good look at how Tony Stark makes money for himself. Noah's mouth curled up. This thing is really cool to think about. The next day, Noah got the information collected by Frank. I also have a general understanding of the situation of Irish gangs. Okay, you don't have to worry about the next thing. Put away the information, Noah said to Frank. Hearing this, Frank hesitated for a moment. Boss, are you going to take action against the Irish gang? Noah nodded. Well, my parents are coming back soon. I can't let them come back and face threats from these guys. Frank frowned tightly. Noah didn't care, just thinking silently in his heart. The influence of the Irish gangs is not small. Distributed throughout Hell's Kitchen. If all the members of the Irish gangs were wiped out one by one, I am afraid that the whole of New York would be hit by a major earthquake. Fortunately, he doesn't need to do that, he just needs to get rid of the elites. Irish gangsters will naturally be devoured by countless hungry wolves who have been staring at them for a long time. And it is very simple to accomplish this, just deal with the headquarters of the Irish gang. It is not suitable for hands-on during the day, so Noah plans to go at night. Time gradually darkened. Before he set off, a piece of news caught his attention. Tony Stark officially announced that Stark Industries will withdraw from the military industry and no longer produce weapons. Seeing this news, the corners of Noah's mouth curled up. Then I called Caroline. Hey baby, remember what I said? Starting tomorrow, buy me a large amount of shares in Stark Industries, and I will become the second largest shareholder besides Tony Stark. Quote. After hanging up the phone, Noah was in a good mood. Today is such a good day. Noah was beaming, and drove a black van with music playing all the way towards the headquarters of the Irish gang. Irish gang headquarters. Finn Cooley has been feeling agitated lately. Noah Allen, who originally thought he was just a small character, unexpectedly joined the army's line at some point. From the original small role, he became a new nobleman. Of course he could kill Noah Allen, but in this case, the Irish gang would definitely come into the official line of sight. Once gangsters like them come into the government's sights, they will only have one ending, which is destruction. Even if he has spent countless money over the years, it is impossible for him to make waves in the sight of the government. This is the limitation of gangsters. Even though he is one of the gang leaders in Hell's Kitchen, he is still not as good as Noah Allen, who has just emerged from the government. To those people, the Irish gangster was nothing more than a dog. It's really quiet today. Beside Finn Cooley sat a muscular man. This is his most capable subordinate, and the only one qualified to sit beside him. Boss, do you want me to find some fun for you? Finn Cooley shook his head. Forget it, the people on duty have been arranged, especially the flamethrower, there must be no mistakes. I don't want to be stuck at home and get killed by a swarm of bugs. Quote. The big man laughed and said to himself, don't worry, boss, with me here, let alone that kid who only knows how to play with bugs, even if Jin Bin stands here, he won't be able to hurt you at all. What the big man said made Finn Cooley relax a bit. This subordinate of his has already tempered his body to the extreme. According to rumors, this is the case with Jin Bing. Even some guys with special abilities can't please Jin Bing. Although he hasn't compared it, he believes that his subordinate is no worse than Jin Bing. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sneer. The skinny boy at the last meeting dared to call him Jin Bin. Do they really think they don't know anything about gold? Just don't bother to pay attention to him. At the same time, Noah stopped the car. A finger tapped lightly on a remote. The surrounding circuits were suddenly interrupted, and the entire block was plunged into darkness. Seeing this scene, Noah got out of the car and opened the compartment door. This is the charm of high technology. Then, a big man with a height of 2.45 meters came out. The terrifying height, coupled with the strong body, gave people a sense of oppression. All kinds of heavy weapons on his back made this oppressive feeling even more extreme. Anyone standing by his side will probably feel fear. This is exactly the tyrant created by the system. Although it was just a trial model, Noah had full confidence in him. Just as he was about to send out the tyrant, a person came from a distance. Noah narrowed his eyes, and after a while, a smile appeared on his face. Frank, why are you here? Frank came over, staring at the tyrant. The sense of crisis that he had developed between life and death for many years told him that the big guy in front of him was extremely terrifying. While this terrible sense of crisis made his hairs stand on end, it also kept urging him to stay away from this guy. Suppressing the feeling of terror in his heart, Frank said, I know your purpose, and I am a little worried, but it seems that you have made enough preparations. Noah's heart warmed. He didn't ask Frank to do this, and now that Frank can come, he is naturally very happy. So he opened his mouth and said, there is a tyrant, enough to sweep the headquarters of the Irish gangsters. Still, thank you for coming to help me. Quote, Frank shrugged, then said, I'm a friend of your parents and you're my boss, as it should be. Noah nodded, keeping all this in mind. It's been a lot of time, it's time to do it. Noah didn't drag on. The abnormal power outage here has been delayed for a long time, and it is likely to attract the attention of others. According to Noah's thinking, he originally planned to let the tyrant rush in and kill all moving creatures. But Frank was worried. Although he knew that the tyrant was terrible, he was more willing to believe in his own strength. For this point, Noah quite agrees. Not to mention elite tyrants. Not to mention this kind of trial model, even if it is a mass-produced model with mature technology, as long as Frank is prepared, he is more inclined to Frank to win. This is a real ruthless person. Since Frank doesn't believe in the strength of the tyrant, it's better to follow the past to have a look. After all, the tyrant is a trial model, the degree of body modulation is generally not mentioned, and it is not equipped with various high-tech weapons. Maybe there will be fish that slip through the net. But it's different with Frank here, and it can be regarded as an extra layer of insurance. The actions of the tyrant are quite brutal. Boom. There was a bang. The closed door was directly blasted open. Frank frowned. He still plans to sneak in. But looking at the big guy in front of him, he sighed. Should have known this would be the result. Because the gate was blown open, the harsh sirens of the entire building sounded crazily. Finn Cooley, who originally thought something was wrong, changed his face and became extremely ferocious. This is the headquarters of the Irish gang. He wanted to see who dared to break in. Soon, the members of the Irish gangsters hiding in various places quickly gathered together. At the same time, Finn Cooley immediately notified the nearby members to gather everyone. He has no intention of calling the police. As a gangster, if someone breaks in, he doesn't think about how to deal with the enemy and instead calls the police. In the future, the Irish gang will have little prestige in Hell's Kitchen. Finn Cooley's face was cold, and he sat firmly on the sofa, holding a pistol by his hand. In his heart, he wondered who would dare to attack the headquarters of their Irish gang at this time. Do you really think that their Irish gang is at their mercy? Downstairs, gunshots rang out. As time passed, Finn Cooley's complexion changed. Haven't resolved the battle yet. As for the information, why no one passed it on? All this made him a little uneasy. Go down and have a look. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, Finn Cooley finally couldn't bear it anymore, and said to his most proud subordinate. The big man nodded and stood up. At this time, boom. An explosion seemed to sound not far from them. Are you coming up? Finn Cooley's complexion changed drastically. How could it be so fast? His face was cloudy and uncertain, and before everyone went out, he said directly, I'll go too. With that said, he also stood up and walked in the forefront. As for danger, he, Finn Cooley, sat in this position, not relying on rhetoric. Downstairs not far from them, Frank watched the tyrant push in surprise. That's right, it's a horizontal push. This big guy is not afraid of bullets at all, and the large number of heavy weapons equipped on his body can't cause any burden to him at all. Even if an enemy wants to get close, his terrifying power will immediately let everyone know how terrifying his power is. He saw a gang member with his own eyes, hiding in the dark, and when the big guy approached, he slashed at him. The slash was done, but not even bullets could kill the tyrant, let alone a knife. The tyrant grabbed the man with his backhand, and with a relaxed pinch, the man's neck was already broken. Such terrifying power. Frank looked at it with a frown. Horrible. He has 1,000 ways to kill an enemy who is close to him. But such a rough way, he never thought about it. The way of pinching a person's neck with one hand is beyond his imagination. The human body is not that fragile. No wonder the boss is so confident. With this guy around, as long as the Irish gangsters don't use heavy weapons, it's impossible to resist. He glanced at Noah Allen, who was behind him, feeling a little shocked. In front of such a big guy, even he felt quite powerless. Noticing Frank's eyes, Noah smiled and said, "The Tyrant is the company's latest research effort. However, it is still an unfinished product and needs to be kept confidential." Quote. Frank nodded solemnly. The word tyrant is absolutely worthy of the name. The behavior of this big guy is indeed the same as that of a tyrant. Brutal and savage, with the power of a true slayer. Pushing all the way, no one can stop the advance of half a tyrant. There are some clever ones who want to hide. But with Frank around, these people's ideas can only become a luxury after all. In front of Frank, it is not so easy for these people who have never even been on the battlefield to hide. Let's go, next floor. We're about to reach the top floor, and if nothing else happens, Finn Cooley should be upstairs. The corners of Noah's mouth were hooked, and the frost in his eyes was undisguised. He came here today just to kill someone. He doesn't want to be a villain, but he will never allow people or forces that want to harm him, or even his family. If this is darkness, let him sink into it. Around the corner upstairs, Finn Cooley's eyes were murderous. In front of him were a group of gunmen. Each gunner is equipped with an automatic weapon. And at the very front, one person even carried a bazooka on his shoulders. This complete firepower gave Finland Cooley absolute confidence. If it's outside, things like bazookas can't be taken out. But this is the headquarters of the Irish gang. Even Jin Bing didn't have the guts to come here. He wanted to let those intruders, and even the gang in Hell's Kitchen, know. What would happen if you dared to break into their Irish gang headquarters? The next moment, with heavy steps, a strong and huge figure appeared around the corner. Fire! Finn Cooley ordered directly. Although that person looked a little weird, all he had to do was kill him. More than 20 automatic rifles began to spit flames. At the same time, the man carrying the bazooka pressed the launch button without hesitation. Boom! There was an explosion. After the smoke and dust passed, the lights of New York outside the building were exposed. It's a pity that their block is dark. Seeing this scene, Finn Cooley sneered. No matter who the enemy is, there is no possibility of survival under this rocket. But in the next moment, the sound of heavy footsteps sounded quickly. The footsteps were quite heavy, as if a tank was running wildly. Then, he saw a huge figure jumping out from under the blasted stairs. He jumped directly upstairs. Finn Cooley's pupils shrunk. Didn't die. How can it be? After the terrifying figure jumped up, like a tiger entering a herd of sheep, he killed several gunmen who were too close to him in the blink of an eye. The member who just released the rocket was thrown out of the hole by the other party like a chicken. You know, this is the 10th floor. There was a look of horror in Finn Cooley's eyes. Boss, don't worry, I'll solve him. Be careful. Seeing that it was his most capable subordinate who spoke, he breathed a sigh of relief. At this point he has seen it. That monster is indeed terrifying, but the rockets are not useless. At this time, half of the monster's body was blown to pieces. Although he didn't know why he didn't die, it was obviously not at his peak. And the strength of this subordinate of his is also extremely terrifying. The big man grinned grimly and walked towards the tyrant. It's been a long time since I met an opponent, and you monster is just right. Come on, let's see who is stronger. Quote. Finn Cooley looked downstairs. He just received information that there are 3 people on the other side. This monster is one, and there are 2 people. Finn Cooley shouted. Come out, since you dare to break into our Irish gang, don't you have the courage to show up? Soon, 2 people came up. When Finn Cooley saw the person coming, his eyes showed astonishment, and then he frowned heavily. Noah Allen. Although he has not seen Noah Allen himself, he has seen his photo. Noah looked at Finn Cooley calmly, and said lightly. We finally met. I've been looking forward to today for a long time. It was originally planned to be 4,000 words per day. After all, this is considered a regular update. Then I went to the recommendation and added updates from time to time, about 2 or 3 days to add one update. The author himself is not to say that he is handicapped, but the speed of coding is definitely not fast. Originally, I imagined that a chapter could be written in about an hour and a half. After all, if you don't need to find information for old books, even post-editing, you can finish it in about an hour and 10 minutes. The result, well, now a chapter is almost 2 hours, and this is not counting the time for later inspection and modification. On the one hand, it is because many things in the new book are undecided, so there are many things to think about and a lot of information to consult. After writing for a while, after getting used to it, the speed can be improved, but now there is no way. In addition, the author is a part-time job. Well, if you want to eat, you really can't feed the girl who is waiting to be fed just by writing books. By the way, the girl is pretty smart, knowing nothing at the age of 2. That's not good genetics. We have no hope for ourselves. Looking for a girl to become a phoenix. Hold your head to avoid danger. Maybe it will be Tsinghua University and Peking University in the future. Education has to keep up. Now just thinking about it makes me worry, and the money spent on going to school is really too much. A rough calculation, in terms of education alone, I am afraid it will cost a small million. The only thing I hate is that I don't know how to use magic tricks, and I can't change money. Digressed. In short, when you become full-time, maybe you dare to think about the experience of changing 10,000 a day. 6,000 a day is not impossible, but for now, in that case, it would be eating, sleeping, and writing a book. It's too hard, and the rhythm will end sooner or later. Thinking about the new book period, treat yourself better. I talked for a long time, not complaining, but just telling everyone about the current situation. As a flutter who wanted to make a career out of novels, he didn't want to make a lot of money, but only wanted to make some small money to support his family. To do this, full attendance is a must. Fortunately, as far as the current situation is concerned, whether it can reach the first order of 500 or not depends on the follow-up, but it should not be a big problem to reach 500 after 3 months of being on the shelves, so everyone can rest assured to bookmark, subscribe, tip and so on. After the 500 average is put on the shelves, we will try our best to achieve 3 times a day. I heard that 500 averages will add 2,000 words a day, and you can get 700 more in a month. Is it much? For the 700, the author is also fighting hard. Back to the topic. The update plan of this book, in short, is like this. As long as the new book issue is on the recommendation, 1 update will be added in 3 days. If there is no recommendation, the plan for adding updates will end, and the regular 2 updates will be on the shelves. This will update a little more than others, is also considered an advantage. Yesterday, a big guy asked if I would add more rewards. It is a must. During this period, there will be more rewards. There is no limit to this commitment. If there is a boss to give the leader, then add 10 more. If there is a silver alliance, then 100 more. Anyway, bragging is not a draft, so it's decided. However, at most 1 update can be added every day, if not, just move it to the shelves and continue to return it. As for the lack of rewards from big bosses, everyone just pretend that they haven't seen the above speech. Is it not normal to rush to the street without a leader? As for won rewards, I'm in a hurry to get one myself. In case I get angry. At worst, move it to the next book. This sentence is nonsense, cross it out, it must be popular. In addition, this plan is only applicable to the new book issue. After the plan is put on the shelves, please check the results before making a decision. As No's voice sounded, the tyrant stopped attacking. Glancing at the monster that had stopped attacking, Finculi also made people back off. In just a dozen seconds, half of his subordinates were already dead. The subordinates downstairs did not say anything. Those here are all the real elite in his hands. After this battle, the strength of the Irish gang has been greatly reduced. Although he intends to kill these people, he is not absolutely sure at this time. Even though the monster was seriously injured, no one dared to underestimate it. You probably didn't expect that we would meet in this place. Noah said with a smile. There are many gunmen in front of us. But he was not stupid, and hid beside the tyrant. The huge body of the tyrant is enough to block the bullets of those gunmen. And he can back off at any time. I really didn't expect that. If I knew this, I should have killed you earlier. Finland coolly nodded, and said with some regret. In fact, he had already planned to give up. For gangsters like them, interests are eternal. After finding that Noah Allen was not moving, he no longer planned to do it. Compared with the possible price after assassinating Noah Allen, the gain is really too small. After finishing speaking, Finland coolly continued. How about we stop? Although I did trouble you before, in fact, you caused us more trouble. The matter about Mayer's company can even become the premise of our cooperation. Including Tolan, who is in conflict with you, I can also deal with him. Quote. Noah chuckled. It sounds good. Not only can you reduce an enemy, but you can also gain a friendship. Finn coolly grinned. Of course, we have a great premise for working together, don't we? At the same time, in a place where no one could see, his hand waved lightly. A gunman in the crowd moved back a few steps calmly. He is looking for a place. As long as he finds Noah Allen's position, he will be sure to kill with one blow. Finn coolly chatted with Noah with a smile. He felt that he had already won the game. Whether it is cooperation or hands-on, he can take advantage. It's just that he didn't notice that Noah also gestured to Frank. He came here today to destroy the Irish gangsters. How could they cooperate with each other? The next moment, Noah suddenly shouted violently. Kill! The tyrant instantly raised the Gatling gun in his hand. Normally, this kind of terrifying weapon is not something humans can use at all. But in the hands of tyrants, this heavy weapon, which could only be used for vehicles, has exerted its terrifying power. Flash and blood flew everywhere, and screams continued. Finland Cooley's complexion changed drastically, and he retreated without thinking. Exposed to such heavy fire, no one could escape for their lives. This is Noah's real purpose. Finn Cooley feels the delay will do him good. But he simply did not understand that the real terror of the tyrant had never been his own terrible strength and immortality. It's the various heavy weapons that humans can't use on him. Pulling the distance away is a massacre. Under the tongue of flames, in an instant, most of Finn Cooley's men were killed or injured. If you want to leave now, how could you possibly be able to? Go back. Approaching the past is the only hope. Finn Cooley growled. After finishing speaking, rush back. At this time, he can't back down. Backing down is a dead end. His target is Noah Allen. He could tell that that big man was not a normal human being at all. Thinking of Noah Allen's occupation, he knew that this might be a biological weapon made by the other party. As long as Noah Allen can be taken down, this big man will naturally not be a problem. At the same time, the big man under him also began to charge forward. The terrifying explosive power made Noah's face full of surprise. This speed is even worse than that of Frank. Noah could tell at a glance. This is an ordinary person, without any transformation. Any member of a gangster can have such terrifying explosive power. It seems that he underestimated the world. But is it useful? The target of that guy's rush was not him, but the tyrant. Obviously, he was holding the idea of delaying time for Finn Cooley, or even getting rid of the tyrant altogether. But, innocent, Noah sneered. The big man approached the tyrant, and the tyrant stopped shooting immediately. Grabbed towards the big man. But the big man sneered. Without dodging or dodging, he punched him. Obviously, he wants to fight the tyrant. The next moment, when the two came into contact, the big man's expression suddenly changed. All along, the strength he was proud of hadn't played a role in front of this big man, and he was instantly suppressed. Not only that, he even heard the crack of his arm bone. Before he could react, the tyrant violently threw him out with a swish, and threw him directly against the wall. PFF'd. A mouthful of blood spurted out. There was disbelief on the big man's face. What the hell is this monster? And the next moment, the tyrant had rushed towards him. A look of despair appeared in his eyes. Finland Cooley naturally also noticed the situation here. While being astonished, he also became even crazier. If Noah Allen is not taken down, he will surely die. However, as he approached, Noah looked at Frank. Frank nodded, without saying a word, drew out the ballistic knife, and greeted him. Go away, Finn Cooley growled. Beside him, there are two gunmen. But Frank played 1-on-3 without the slightest fear. As soon as the two sides approached, Frank showed his terrifying fighting ability. In the blink of an eye, a shooter had his throat slashed with his knife. Noah watched from behind, watching Finn Cooley's increasingly desperate expression. When the tyrant stomped on the big man's chest, Frank's knife tipped into Finn Cooley's chest. Noah walked over Sheeran. Too bad I forgot to tell you. You shouldn't mess with me, I'm a decent businessman, generally, I don't want to hurt people. Quote. Finn Cooley's eyes were full of unwillingness and anger. Serious businessman, no ghost will believe it. Unfortunately, he couldn't speak anymore. After solving the battle, Noah said, "Let's go, after so long, the police may be here soon." With that said, Noah looked around with a little pity. Get used to mopping up gangsters. There must be a lot of oil and water in a large gang like the Irish gang. Unfortunately, he doesn't have that time. Frank looked at the calm expression of the boss, and his heart skipped a beat. It's so calm. Perhaps, it is really redundant to do it yourself today. Not to mention anything else, just rushing at him without the slightest fear is enough to prove that the boss still has no means to use. Soon, a black van drove away. After that, just a few minutes, George Stacy arrived with a swarm of police cars. After looking at the scene, George Stacy's face was gloomy. The Irish gangsters are gone. He doesn't care if these scumbags live or die. But the headquarters of a top gangster in Hell's Kitchen was directly breached. The earthquake caused by this incident was more terrifying than anything else. A large gang was wiped out at the headquarters. This incident directly attracted the attention of the New York police. Especially in that battle, there were not only gunshots, but even rocket explosions. You know, the headquarters of the Irish gangsters is not a wilderness. First there was a power outage, and then a shootout ensued. It made countless people around tremble, for fear of being affected. The impact is extremely bad. If one is not careful, it may lead to a decline in the credibility of the government. Therefore, in the next few days, the police directly launched a frenzied sweep. Gangster, even if you are the king of Hell's Kitchen, you have to stay in the sewer for me. To dare to show up at this time is to provoke the government. So even if there are countless hungry wolves around who want to devour the territory left by the Irish gangsters, but they could only silently wait for the end of the police raid. No one dares to confront the police at such a time. Compared with the fear of the underworld, Jin Bin and other gang bosses are even more angry. The Irish gangsters were wiped out, and it is true that they lost an opponent. But the disappearance of a large gangster like this is also a deterrent to them. Originally, in this Hell's Kitchen, what they said was more effective than the police. But now, in a short period of time, there have been 2 consecutive sweeps by the government. The horror image they created in Hell's Kitchen has been affected. Who is it? Jin Bin had a cold face, thinking about the other party's origin. If it's a local gangster, it's okay, but I'm afraid some powerful characters from other places broke in. This will have a huge impact on his future plans. Faced with this crisis, he immediately asked Leland to contact Mrs. Gao and other underworld forces. In this matter, they must stand on the same front. All parties attach great importance to this matter. Only Mrs. Gao's face remained unchanged. No matter who it is, if it dares to come, then kill it. The Russian brothers sneered. That guy Finn Cooley died without making a sound. You old woman, do you think you can be better than that guy? A murderous intent flashed in Mrs. Gao's eyes. On the side, Leland Owsley pretended to be Jin and knocked on the table, and said, "Okay, everyone, no matter who makes the shot, it's not good news for us. Mrs. Gao, I know you have your confidence, but this is not the reason why you can underestimate the enemy." Quote. Madame Gao withdrew her killing intent, tapped her cane, and said, "The share left by Finland Cooley will be divided according to the previous discussion. As for the enemy, he didn't even know who his opponent was, so there was no need to discuss it." Quote. After speaking, Mrs. Gao was about to leave. Leland Owsley narrowed his eyes slightly, and continued. "That's good, the share is determined like that. But the identity of the enemy, I have some guesses." Quote. Everyone's eyes focused at once. Leland Owsley said, "There are 2 possibilities, one is that he offended some foreign guys who are not easy to mess with. Besides, there is another possibility, Noah Allen." Quote. Some fear flashed in Leland Owsley's eyes. He is Jin Bin's confidant, so he knows how deep the water in this world is. Just like Mrs. Gao, the opponent's influence in Hell's Kitchen can be said to be the worst among all the people sitting here. However, his fear of Madame Gao is the highest. As for the mention of Noah Allen, he has his own selfishness. Noah Allen. Madame Gao frowned. She had heard the name. Leland Owsley continued. Noah Allen, with some special means, has caused a lot of trouble in Hell's Kitchen recently. On top of that, he's at odds with the Irish gang. The Irish gang had attacked him several times, but without success. Quote. There was also a strange flash in the eyes of the other gang leaders. Noah Allen, could it be so powerful? You know, the Irish gang can't stop it, and neither can most of them here. That guy, Finn Cooley, is no small character. Everyone memorized the name. But no one said much. Although they all knew the name Noah Allen, the other party had little to do with them. As long as you don't provoke them, it's not their trouble. Now the headache should be Jin Bin. Thinking of this, many people looked at the thin young man. Is this person Jin Bin? Probably not. At this point, they still don't know anything about Jin. But where is the real Jin Bin? That guy Jin Bing is the one who hides the deepest among all of them. That's fine, anyway, it's Jin Bin who is in conflict with Noah Allen, so I can see if that Noah Allen can dig out his details. Many people know about Annabella. Kim was the one who had a direct conflict with Noah Allen. Regardless of whether this matter was done by Noah Allen, what Jin Bing is doing now is to drag them into the water. Here, no one is an idiot. Even Mrs. Gao, who didn't take Noah Allen seriously, didn't want to ask for trouble. Leland Owsley looked at the expressions of the crowd and knew what they were thinking. He had expected this, but his face was still a little gloomy. Noah Allen is obviously a man who will exact revenge. There is a conflict between them and Noah Allen. And during this time, although they didn't do anything directly, they actually contributed to dealing with Noah Allen. Even if he can let go, it depends on whether Noah Allen will just give up. So, be the first to attack. Since you can't drag these people into the water, you can only do it yourself. Leland Owsley looked cold. Noah Allen was sentenced to death in his heart. This is something he and the boss have agreed on long ago. After solving the Irish gangster, Noah's mood relaxed a lot. It just so happened that my parents were coming back soon. I just talked to the two of them on the phone 2 days ago. Although they had fun outside, they were already homesick. Faced with this reasonable request, Noah naturally has no reason to refuse. It's just that although the house is already being rebuilt, when the two come back and see the brand new house, they don't know what their expressions will be. Noah smiled wryly in his heart. These days, he has been paying attention to Tony Stark's situation. On the second day after Tony Stark came back, at the press conference, he announced that Stark Industries would close the weapons department. Once the news was released, it directly detonated public opinion. The stock of Stark Industries, within a few days, fell to a lower figure than before he was kidnapped. When he saw that the stock had fallen, Noah started to buy Stark Industries stock frantically. However, when he acquired, he noticed that there was another force that was also conducting acquisition operations. If he was not mistaken, it should be Obadiah Stane. However, compared to his above-board acquisition, Obadiah Stane's actions are much more secretive. So, in the end, he made a fortune. It's a pity that my funds are limited, otherwise, it is really impossible to surpass Obadiah Stane, but I should be able to get back all the scattered stocks outside. But even so, he was satisfied. With his current shares, every research result of Tony Stark will bring him a large amount of income. In addition, he also noticed that many terrorist strongholds have been uprooted recently. In the news, a name was mentioned frequently: Iron Man. Looking at Tony Stark showing off his power, Noah's mood fluctuated a little. Counting the time, the plot is probably about to begin. Regarding the plot of Iron Man, Noah also considered whether to participate. In the end, Noah decided to get involved. Firstly, it's hard to say whether something like the plot will cause problems, and secondly, this matter has real benefits for him. Being able to become a superhero shows that Tony Stark's quality is no problem. Save Tony Stark, even if he won't admit it. With this incident, it shouldn't be a big problem to get something from Tony Stark. Not to mention anything else, in Tony Stark's hands, there are only two things that he covets very much. One is the arc reactor. There's a huge amount of energy in this thing. If you can get it, it will be a huge improvement for Umbrella. Taking a step back, his system also needs energy to operate. Whether it is research or manufacturing, the energy consumption is huge. This point, even for him, is not a small burden. The system can open the double-speed research mode. But to open it, the energy needed to be consumed is 10 times that of the current one. Normal mode consumes 10 units of energy per hour, and after acceleration, it reaches 100 units. And the making of life. It is his real whole card, none of them. It can be said that genes are his powerful background, and energy is the source of his strength, both are indispensable. A miniature reactor is not a necessity for him, but if he can get an industrial reactor, then he won't need to worry about energy issues for a long time. In addition, there is artificial intelligence. Tony Stark's Jarvis, but envy him to death. Now Umbrella and Annabella, in his view, the most urgent need is top-level artificial intelligence. If you really encounter a master who forcibly attacks the company's firewall, it's hard to say whether you can stop it. What's more, without the Red Queen umbrella, can he be called an umbrella? Industry specializing in surgery. In this regard, he can't catch up with Tony Stark even if he flatters him. It's a pity that Tony Stark has always protected these core technologies very well. Even if it is given out, it is still a castrated version. But whoever makes these castrated versions is already the world's top artificial intelligence. Finally, there is another reason. He wants to use this to open up the tyrant's reputation. Next year's arms fair. Sorry, he can't wait. A few days later, at night, the phone rang. It's Frank calling. He had already asked Frank to arrange someone to watch every move of Stark Industries. The news on the phone is not urgent. Stark Industries seems to have a commercial dispute. Tony Stark's secretary, Pepper Potts, brought several people from the Secret Service into Stark Industries. Hearing this news, Noah was shocked. What the hell business dispute? This is the first battle of Iron Man's debut. Without thinking, Noah drove directly to Stark Industries. When Noah rushed to Stark Industries, Tony Stark is resting. A phone rang. Tony Stark took out the phone and sat on the sofa. Caller ID is Pepper Potts. Hello, Tony. Tony Stark was about to speak back. There was a sizzle sound. Tony Stark froze instantly. Hello, Tony. Tony. Pepper Potts' voice grew urgent. But Tony Stark couldn't hear it anymore. Breathe and relax. Obadiah Stane's voice came. Tony Stark's face instantly became unbelievable. Obadiah would actually attack him. At this moment, he regretted that he hadn't prepared well. Regret doesn't make any sense at this point. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'm just going to take this arc reactor off your chest. When I wanted to kill you, I was very worried. What I killed was the hen that lays golden eggs. You see, it was meant to be that you survived. You have to lay the last golden egg. Quote. With that said, with a click, Obadiah Stanislav had removed the reactor from Tony Stark's chest. Tony Stark's heart was filled with despair at this time. Remove the reactor, and it won't be long before the shrapnel will kill him. At the same time, Pepper Potts' face changed drastically when he saw that there was no response. Quick, go to the lab, something happened to Tony. Coulson, who had been following him, immediately said. Speed up and be careful, if you find Obadiah, you can kill him at your discretion. When a few people arrived, they saw Tony Stark was dying. Pepper Potts looked anxious. Coulson took his men to find the trace of Obadiah Stanislav. At this moment, Obadiah Stanislav laughed wildly and sat in a huge robot. With the bright eyes of the robot appearing, the Iron King begins to act. Face this terrifying war machine. Coulson and others have no ability to resist at all. The bullet hit the Iron Tyrant and could only wipe out some sparks. Can't do any harm at all. On the other side, Tony Stark installed the old arc reactor, then panted into the Mark III armor. Jarvis, check the remaining energy, check the performance of the armor, and prepare to start. After the calibration, the armor started to work. Boom. With a bang, Tony Stark drove the battle armor and exploded. His face under the mask was full of anger. Obadiah, it's time to settle the score. It was not difficult to find traces of the Iron Overlord, and the two quickly made contact. The horror of the battle between two robots is far beyond everyone's imagination. Mark III is flexible, light and has superior performance. But the Iron Overlord has strong armor and is equipped with various advanced weapons. Coulson stared at the unimaginable battle in front of him, and immediately opened his mouth. Is this the armor of Tony Stark in the Intelligence? How handsome. At the same time, I can't help feeling envious. At any time, he can also fly in the sky with this armor. From now on, apart from seeing the captain again, this is the biggest dream of his life. This kind of battle armor is definitely a man's romance. At the same time, he was also thinking about how to find a way to get the director to buy a few. If he can buy it, he has a chance. The two fought crazily. In the hands of the two, the cars on the road were as vulnerable as toys. The destructive power of the battle has surpassed that of a small-scale war. With a stabbing sound, the iron bully trampled to the ground a car that looked very high-end at first glance. Obadiah Stane didn't care about that. With the Iron Overlord, he is the master of the battlefield. Even Tony Stark in front of him is vulnerable in front of the Iron Overlord. It's just a car, nothing more. But in the next moment, "Hey, big guy, you broke my favorite car." Quote, hearing the voice of questioning, Obadiah Stane looked towards the source of the voice. Not far away, a young man looked at him unhappily. Can't see what's going on. Is this man an idiot? A thought flashed through Obadiah Stane's mind. On the other side, Tony Stark also noticed the identity of that person. Is this kid crazy? Tony Stark frowned. Get out of here quickly, he yelled. No's expression remained the same, he just leaned against a large van. On the side, Frank stood fully armed, his muscles tensed up, and he felt very uneasy in front of this kind of war machine. Noah smiled. You don't look very good, Iron Man. Tony Stark's face darkened. Of course he knew his situation was bad. But this kid is so annoying. Looking at Tony Stark's expression, Noah smiled brightly. There was just a hint of heartache between the brows. He wasn't lying. The car that was smashed by the Iron Bully was indeed his favorite and also his only supercar. He is not a 24K pure gold tycoon like Tony Stark. There are dozens of supercars in the garage. As a rookie in the business world, he was still in his infancy. I can't wait to spend all my money on development. It's just such a good car for appearances. But, it's time for a new one. Sighing in my heart, the next moment, Noah asked. Do you need my help? This time I came here, and I happen to bring some good things. Quote. With that said, Noah patted the carriage behind him. Come prepared. Tony Stark was a little puzzled, but now is not the time to be entangled in these. But even if Tony Stark knew that Noah was here to help, his stubbornness didn't diminish in the slightest. Good stuff. You're not so cute puppies. In this kind of battle, I'm afraid tickling is not enough. Quote. Noah chuckled. Little Nini, you will die with that mouth sooner or later. Remember, you owe me a big favor. Quote. Quote. Before Tony Stark could react, the back door of the van has been opened. Boom, boom, boom. Heavy footsteps sounded. The entire van was shaking with the sound of footsteps. Tony Stark's heart skipped a beat. This is not the kind of movement that a gadget like a fighting wolf can create. Aside, Obadiah Stanislav and Iron King frowned. He instinctively felt a little uneasy, raised his arm, and was about to launch a missile. Just as he was about to attack, Tony Stark reacted. Once again rushed over. Reality is not a game. He didn't know if what Noah Allen had prepared was useful. But he knew he couldn't watch Obadiah Stane attack like this. Although relying on terrifying power, the Iron Overlord quickly got rid of him, but it was too late. I saw 3 2-4 5-meter tall giants walking out. With a strong physique, it is extremely intimidating at first glance. In the hands of the 3 giants, they all hold a huge 6-barreled Gatling. The originally extremely heavy machine guns appear very harmonious in the hands of these 3 giants. At the same time, he carried a huge alloy battle axe on his back, which was obviously not a decoration. Seeing this scene, everyone was extremely surprised. These big guys are not to be messed with. This was the first thought that flashed through everyone's mind. Coulson was even more stunned. What a monster. What are those food buckets in the bureau for? They have no news of such important information. After monitoring for such a long time, it was almost lonely. Not to mention anything else, Noah Allen appeared here today, and he was very angry that he didn't receive the notification. Of course he didn't know that it was in a certain grass in front of Noah's house. Two well-equipped agents were struggling in a daze. It's a pity that the ropes on their bodies are very tightly bound, and this level of struggle has no effect at all. The two of them didn't know who it was until they were knocked out. This is naturally Frank's masterpiece. With Frank's anti-reconnaissance methods, the two agents had already been discovered by him. It's just that Noah has been ignoring it. It wasn't until today that Noah let Frank take action to solve these two suspected agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. As for the rest of the stalkers, no two are so lucky. At this point, they have all turned into corpses. This is a warning. Noah's warning to the whole of Hell's Kitchen. Coulson scolded in his heart for a while, and was also a little hot-eyed. Knowing that Tony Stark has armor, they've been wanting to buy a few sets. It's just that they are still under observation. According to their assessment of Tony Stark, it may not be easy to get the armor. But now this big man gave him another consideration. Even if Tony Stark doesn't sell armor, Noah Allen won't. Of course, all of this must be based on the qualified fighting ability of these big guys. After seeing this steel war, his requirements for war weapons are much higher. The next moment, Obadiah Stane moved. Noah Allen, do you think you can fight me with this rubbish? Obadiah Stane laughed maniacally. He knew the kid. Because it is this kid who recently acquired shares in Stark Industries. Originally, he was still thinking about how to get rid of this guy, but he didn't expect that the other party would actually send it to his door. As long as it is flesh, it is impossible to stop his Iron Overlord. What about the three monsters? Unlike Tony Stark's armor, his Iron Overlord was born for war. Two missiles were launched from the shoulders of Iron Overlord, aimed directly at the tyrant. Noah's face remained unchanged, and the three tyrants have already started to make moves. Despite its size, the tyrant is extremely mobile. Boom! Two explosions sounded. A cloud of smoke and dust was left in place. A sneer crept across Obadiah Stane's face. In his heart, those three monsters were already dead. But at the next moment, the sound of Gatling's barrel turning sounded. The next moment, da-da-da, the bullets hit the Iron King like a storm. Even with the iron body of the Iron Overlord, his body shook frequently after being beaten. That is to say, the alloy on Iron Overlord body is strong enough, otherwise he would have been beaten into a sieve long ago. But this is not the end. Soon, in the smoke, two more Gatlings also shot a storm of bullets. This time, even the Iron Overlord couldn't stand firm, and was beaten straight back. Three tyrants, none of them died. Noah had expected this. But others are not as calm as Noah. Coulson took a breath. This is simply a humanoid tank. At this point, he felt that he should propose to the director to buy a few. Tony Stark was also surprised. But he thought more. After fighting for a while before, no one knew better than him how difficult the Iron Overlord was. This storm of bullets did suppress the Iron Overlord, but it was still far from being able to finish him off. Gritting his teeth, Tony Stark flew up again and rushed towards the Iron King. See this scene. Noah shook his head. Rushing in at this time, isn't it looking for a fight? Even if a tyrant has eyes, bullets don't have eyes either. After Tony Stark rushed over, he dragged the Iron Overlord directly, and was about to knock down the Iron Overlord with the bullet storm. This big man is not his battle armor, and it is not that simple to think about it when he falls to the ground. But he just fell. When. The impact of a burst of bullets struck violently. Just kick him out. Tony Stark couldn't help cursing. He couldn't help it. Glancing at the calm Noah Allen, Tony Stark hurried over, uncovered his mask and said, "Boy, you can't do this." Although Obadiah is an idiot, this big guy was born for war. Quote. Noah smiled. Of course I know, little Nini, what you have to do now is not to worry about these things. Still think about how to repay my life-saving grace. You know, counting the one in Afghanistan, this is the second time. Quote. Tony Stark's mask went straight up. He didn't want to talk again. The suppression of the bullet storm continued, but Obadiah Stane also saw it. These bullets couldn't hurt him at all. So he put his hands over his visor while he waited for the bullets to finish. When the time comes, it will naturally be his time to fight back. But he didn't notice that when those tyrants were shooting, their bodies were constantly moving forward. In such a short while, the distance between the two sides has changed from the initial 100 meters to less than 50 meters now. A normal tyrant should be remotely controlled by humans. But these tyrants are not normal products. The tyrants in the laboratory are still being cultivated. These are all cultivated by him through the system. Directly controlled by him, coupled with the instinctive fighting consciousness, made the tyrant extremely terrifying. By the way, thanks to the big guy from the Irish gang. The opponent's physical fitness is very good. Although it is not easy to clone the other party's body in the laboratory, further research is still in progress. But the system can directly ignore some of the difficulties. The 3 tyrants here, except one, was the tyrant who was used to kill the Irish gang before. The other 2 are new and improved models. The power is scarier than the one that broke into the Irish gangster. Noah controlled the 3 tyrants, and through the suppression of the bullet storm, he approached the Iron Tyrant. He knew very well that Iron Overlord could fly. And the tyrant, facing an enemy that can fly, is a living target. Of course he couldn't let this happen. Finally, the sound of bullets pouring out disappeared, leaving only the sound of the hot barrel turning. A sneer crept across Obadiah Stane's face. But as soon as he raised his head, he saw 3 tyrants rushing towards him with strides. Obadiah Stane's face remained unchanged. Want to get close? Then try it. His Iron Overlord is invincible. Boom. Like the collision of 2 giant beasts. The first tyrant directly collided with the Iron Bully. The terrifying power of the 2 made the nearby cars tremble. Die. Obadiah Stane's face was ferocious, and he wanted to rely on the terrifying power of the Iron Overlord to directly tear this monster into pieces. However, although the Iron Overlord did suppress the opponent, it did not have the crushing effect as he imagined. At the same time, 2 other tyrants rushed over. Holding a huge alloy battle axe, it slammed down on him. Seeing this situation, Obadiah Stane's face changed and he immediately avoided it. But how could the tyrant who was in a stalemate with him make him retreat as he wished? Obadiah Stane cursed inwardly, and then fired a missile from his shoulder. Only then did the tyrant in front of him explode. But at the same time, 2 alloy battle axes also came. Obadiah Stane tried his best to dodge, but one of the tomahawks still removed half of the Iron King's arm. The other tomahawk didn't have such a good effect, but sparks flew everywhere, exposing the wiring inside. The most important thing is that the tyrant who was just blown away did not die. Although he was severely injured by a missile at close range, he managed to stand up. Terrifying survival ability, terrifying fighting ability. At this moment, cold sweat broke out on Obadiah Stane's forehead. Big trouble. On the other side, Coulson's eyes lit up. Nice one. Just don't know how much it costs. Tony Stark's eyes were also full of dignity. Noah watched this scene with a smile. If Obadiah Stane hadn't thought about attacking before, but chose to take off and flee directly, there might be a glimmer of hope. But now, the outcome of the battle is already doomed. The terrifying oppressive power of the 3 tyrants had the Iron Tyrant in a tight grip. In just half a minute, the incomparably powerful Iron Overlord had been dismantled to pieces. At the end of the battle, Noah looked at Tony Stark and said, "How about it, my little guys, are you enough to tickle you?" Noah couldn't see the expression on Tony Stark's face under the mask, but they could hear the change in Tony Stark's voice. "These little guys are not bad, but against me, there is still a big gap." The big guy was nothing but huge. "If it were me, I wouldn't give your little ones any room. By the way, what are these guys called?" Quote, Noah's mouth curled up. "Don't mind, you will ask the name." "Tyrant," Noah said. Tony Stark took note of the name. Then he said tirelessly, "Just wait, I will upgrade the battle armor soon, and by then, these big babies of yours still won't be able to tickle me." Noah chuckled. These are just trial models, not official models yet. Moreover, the potential of the tyrant has not yet been realized. Coulson on the side listened to the argument between the 2, he didn't know which one was stronger and which was weaker. But it seems that both have their own advantages. Tony Stark's armor is a man's dream. Noah Allen's tyrant, the violent battle, shocked him. All he wanted to know now was how much it would cost to take down these big guys. But he also knew that now was not the time to discuss business. At the end of the battle, Noah got the first-hand data of the tyrant's battle. The data this time seems to be much more intuitive than when the Irish gangsters were eliminated. Before leaving, he didn't forget to taunt Tony Stark. "Hey, have you thought about how to return my favor? Tony Stark didn't speak. After fighting for so long and being taunted several times by Noah Allen, he just wants to curse now. After getting in the car, Noah thought of something again, and added, "Don't expose me about what happened today. The tyrant has not yet been finalized and needs to be kept secret." Quote. "No," Tony Stark said sullenly. Although he has a tough mouth, he is not a person who does not know what is good or bad. Noah glanced at Coulson. Then Frank stepped on the accelerator, and the two left directly with the tyrant who had completed the test. Presumably, the tyrant's information will soon be known by the big bald head. At the company, transport the tyrant into the laboratory. Elvis was shocked when he saw these big guys. "Boss, these are..." "Tyrant," Noah replied lightly. "How is it possible? The tyrant is still being cultivated, how could there be a finished product?" Elvis lost his voice. Noah didn't answer, just said, "These are the battle data of the tyrant, and some adjustment data, take a look." With that said, Noah handed over a document and the video just recorded to Elvis. As for the source of the tyrant, he wasn't worried that Elvis would investigate further. No one can find out that he has a system. Sometimes, mystery is the best deterrent. It doesn't take much. As long as he is intimidated for half a year, he can use the system to transform his potential into real strength. Of course, having mystery without real ability will inevitably attract more coveted people. Only if people can't see the depth, but if someone dares to reach out, they can solve it with the power of thunder, which can have the corresponding effect. And he happened to be the latter. The system is his biggest trump card. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.